Hi, strangers. Good evening. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Edina City Council. My name is Jennifer Benarad. I'm the city's Communications and Technology Services Director, and I help oversee the audio and visual presentations during the meeting. First of all, if you've not already done so, please silence your cell phones and pagers. If you did not pick up a copy of the agenda, they are outside the glass doors on the small wooden podium to my left. If you're here tonight to address the council, you may do so during public hearings after the proponents have made their presentations and the mayor asks for public testimony. If you're here to address something that's not on the council agenda, you may do so during the community comment portion of the agenda. In either case, you have 3 minutes to speak. Please stand at one of the two side podiums. That's this one here or this one here. Stand only where I am if you have audio or visual materials to present. At that time, I'll give you a wireless microphone like the one I'm using. Before beginning your remarks, please clearly state your full name and address, including suite number for you business types. That will signal the start of your talking time. When you have 30 seconds remaining, the yellow light will turn on at your podium, and you should begin to wrap up your remarks. And of course, when your time is ended, the red light will turn on. You should, at that point, finish your remarks and take your seat. If at any time tonight you have difficulty hearing, please signal me or another member of the staff, and we'll provide you with what's called a listen device. It's a device that simply slips over your ear and amplifies what our microphones are picking up. If you choose to leave before the meeting adjourns, please do keep in mind that the only thing separating these chambers from the lobby is a sheet of glass. So try to keep your conversations as quiet as possible, as our microphones often can pick up the crowd in the lobby as well. It's not a terribly nice night out, so I won't encourage you to stand on the steps to have those conversations, but if you can move closer to the police department or down the hall, that would be appreciated. With that, does anyone have any questions? Okay, we will. You can keep your phones on, just quiet. Silence them. We'll give the council just a few more minutes to prepare as they recently wrapped up a work session upstairs, and then we'll get things underway. Thanks for your patience.
Ready to go? Everybody? Everybody ready?
Clean up on aisle 3 over.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 4th, 2013 meeting of the Edina City Council and the Edina Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Roll call, please, Ms. Megan.
Member Bennett?
Here.
Member Brindle?
Here.
Member Sprague?
Here.
Member Swenson?
Here.
Mayor Hovland?
Here. Next matter before us is approval of the form of meeting agenda. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on approving the form of meeting agenda. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And then the adoption of the consent agenda. Is there anyone on the council that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda?
I do, Your Honor. H.
H. All right. With the exception of 4H, is there anything else? All right. With the exception of 4H, we've got a motion on the balance of the consent agenda. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. And now,
Excuse me, Your Honor. I need to know who seconded that. I did not hear.
that was, you moved it, Member Sprague, I believe.
Did you second it?
Second.
No, I think he did. You're going to have me starting down the road of former Mayor Van Valkenburg, where he just makes up who's made the motion and who seconded the motion.
Well, I think that's appropriate tonight that we
It
do
is.
it that way.
Yeah.
It is. God
All
bless
right,
him.
yeah. Josh makes a motion and Mary, yeah, okay.
That's right. All in favor, I say aye, and what's next?
Yeah, and nobody gets to oppose it. All right. All right, Member Sprague, 4H.
I know that we're under a time crunch tonight, and I apologize for pulling this, but the action requested is study Interlochen Boulevard, Xerxes, and West Shore Drive in Cornelia. And for clarity purposes, by West Shore Drive, Cornelia, was the ETC suggesting to look at the feasibility of both of those corridors, or is that one project?
Councilmember Sprague and Council, the West Shore Drive and the Cornelia Drive sidewalks were actually petition sidewalks.
Okay.
So those we would probably look in combination, and actually we just need to go back through our old feasibility report when we did that neighborhood and pull out those costs, and so that seemed to be a pretty easy one to relook at the feasibility of sidewalks there.
So looking at both of them, we're not incurring any new costs and doubling up.
Right, that's correct.
Okay. Interlochen, Xerxes, and so 42nd Street's off because that's going with the 2014 reconstruction.
That's correct, yep.
Okay, and on the 42nd Street, it says Oakdale to France. I thought the reconstruction was only to Grimes. Was it only the east leg that's in the 2014?
It's only the east leg, but we'll look at the entire leg just to see if it could be done with that project, in conjunction with that project.
And we wouldn't have to talk about scope now as to whether we do that leg. Okay.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So the only one off is East Normandale Road, and we might have clarity on that after we look at West Shore and Cornelia.
Correct, yes.
As an alternative corridor. Okay. All right. With those clarifications, then the other comments I wanted to make was at some point down the road we have to revisit our funding table. We have a school zone defined as 0.7 mile radius. And how are we going to be using what payments are going to be replaced by the PACS funds? I've put this on the dais before, so that needs to be weaved into our discussions at some point.
Yes.
With that comment being made, I will move this item.
Second.
All right, discussion, Member Brindle.
I just have a comment on the Normandale Road sidewalk since we pulled this from 70th to 66th on the east side of 100. That is a one-way road going north. So if a family or a child is on a bicycle and they're going west on 66th and they want to come home and they live between 66th and 70th on that frontage road on the east side of 100, legally they'd have to cross 100, come around and go completely around to stay in the traffic lanes going their direction, since that leg of Normandale is a one-way going north. And so what I'd like to see on that piece of sidewalk, and when we get there we'll talk about it further, but I want to make sure that sidewalk has a bike lane element to it, that has a two-way bike lane that allows kids to go south on a northbound car road. So that's going to be important in that one, to get kids home safely without having to cross Highway 100. Okay, thanks.
You'll get to see all the design details on these before anything goes to bid or certainly even to contract.
That could become a moot point if you decide to take one of the internal corridors and do that way through to permeate the neighborhood as opposed to Normandale. So it might resolve itself. We'll see.
All right, any other comment? All right. All those in favor of adopting 4H, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. And then as we depart that portion of the agenda, Director Houle, I just wanted to pass along a compliment to you from Minnehaha Creek Watershed District folks. They say that working with staff on 4G, which was the engineering services engagement for the Arden Park area stormwater management plan, they say that you've just been terrific to work with. So
Great, thanks. We're real excited about that project and kicking that project off. So
yeah, I think that's a
Thanks.
great one. All right, now we've got a couple of presentations to make. Two resolutions of condolence to people that served our city so well, happened to pass away on the same day. First, the resolution of condolence for James Van Valkenburg, or as we knew him, Jim Van, called all of us aldermen, male and female, called it the village. I think he was the official first mayor, and we have a resolution prepared that we're going to read this evening. Whereas James Van Valkenburg passed away suddenly on Saturday, May 25th, 2013, and whereas James Van Valkenburg served as a member of the Edina Zoning Board of Appeals from 1966 to 1973, and whereas James Van Valkenburg served as a village trustee for Edina from 1960 to 1974, and whereas James Van Valkenburg served as the first mayor of the city of Edina from 1975 to 1980, and whereas James Van Valkenburg was a charter board member of the Edina Community Foundation in 1977, serving as president and treasurer during his tenure, and whereas James Van Valkenburg was a 40-year leader of the Edina Crime Prevention Fund, and whereas James Van Valkenburg was appointed to the Edina Arts Center Board in 1982, serving 27 years, chairing the board in 2009, and whereas James Van Valkenburg served with great conviction, enthusiasm, and honor and humor, often communicating through letters with his many colleagues, and let's not forget his toothless typewriter, with the jumping J and the missing O and the missing P that took some while to decipher what he was trying to tell you. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Edina City Council hereby extends its heartfelt sympathy to James Van Valkenburg's family members in their loss, recognizing further that his death is a distinct loss to the city in which he lived, served, and won deep affection and respect. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution of condolence?
So moved.
We're moved and seconded. We adopt the resolution of condolence for James Van Valkenburg. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And next, Marcella Dean. Whereas Marcella Dean passed away following an illness on Saturday, May 25th, 2013, and whereas Marcella Dean served as the city clerk of the city of Edina, Minnesota, beginning in 1977 until her retirement in April of 1995. And whereas the city clerk, Marcella was responsible for the administration of all city business licenses, the conduct of elections, preparation of city council materials, including minutes and packets, the codification of ordinances and all legal notices for the city of Edina. And whereas during her tenure with the city of Edina, Ms. Dean performed all duties in an exemplary manner and was a valued member of the city staff. And whereas she was a trustworthy, energetic, and outgoing employee with a genuine heart for service to Edina citizens and her fellow employees. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Edina City Council hereby extends its heartfelt sympathy to Marcella Dean's family members in their loss. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution of condolence?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed say nay. Carried. There was a wonderful funeral for Jim Van Valkenburg last Saturday, and it was a terrific turnout, folks recognizing those many years of service to our town.
So I hear that the three mayors, including yourself, at 6 minutes, did you all manage to stay within 6 minutes?
We didn't do a very good job of that.
Yeah, I
have to
didn't
say
think you were
that,
going to.
Mayors, they weren't too good, but we were close. All right, we're going to move on to the next portion of the agenda. We've got 3 public hearings this evening, and the first one involves a request by Fairview Southdale Hospital, and Director Teague has this matter from a staff standpoint.
of the City Council. Before you is a request by Fairview Southdale Hospital. I'm sure you're all familiar with the site on the Crosstown and France. Property is zoned regional medical, as highlighted, outlined in blue. The parking ramp associated with the hospital has a separate zoning as a parking ramp, a special zoning district. Site is guided in our comp plan for regional medical. What the hospital is proposing to do is to build a two-level 89,000 square foot expansion for a new emergency and urgent care facility. The two pictures that you see on the screen above is the existing hospital today, and then below is with the proposed addition. So you see it would be a two-level, 32-foot tall structure that would be built out toward the Crosstown Freeway. It's shown in the foreground. A few renderings of the building. It'll be a light color, cast stone generally would match the color of the existing building. I'll let the applicant go through their materials board and present the building in a little bit more detail. We'll just quickly go through some pictures. So this is where the addition would be located. Again, here's Crosstown to the north, France Avenue, 65th to the south. The building addition moving toward the Crosstown. So the request before the City Council is a site plan review, a drive aisle setback variance from 20 feet to 6 to 10 feet, and I'll show you the location of that variance in a minute, and a parking stall variance from 2,700, just over 2,700 spaces to just over 2,000 spaces. So here is the setback variances that are requested. Any parking or drive aisle adjacent to a public street or a freeway needs a 20-foot setback. The turnaround or roundabout proposed would have a 6-foot setback to the property line. And then the new drive aisle in this location would have a 10-foot setback. So those are the two variances that are requested this evening. Circulation generally remains the same on the site, two-way traffic all around the building. Ambulances for the new emergency room would enter the new building in this location here. There would be a walkway from the existing parking ramp across the drive aisle here to get into the building. And then again, there would be this pickup and drop-off area in front. WSB conducted a traffic study and parking study. Chuck Rickert from WSB is here to answer any questions that the council may have in regard to to either of those studies. The traffic study concludes that there's no roadway improvements that are required at this time as a result of the addition. However, similar to all of the development that's occurred within this general area, when the stoplight at 65th and France, when there's some improvements that need to be made there, the hospital would contribute to the cost of that, to those improvements. The study also concludes that the existing parking ramps can service this facility. Again, there's just over 2,000 parking spaces out there. The study concludes that based on the existing and now proposed new uses, that the hospital can function with between 1,750 and 1,850 spaces. So essentially there will be still 200 spaces overparked. Also, the parking ramp to the west that's connected to the Skyway, that could be expanded if parking is ever needed in the future. I believe 2 levels could be added to that ramp. In terms of the landscaping, there was some discussion in regard to providing some additional landscaping by our Planning Commission. The concern was for cars coming in and then moving around the roundabout here, lights shining across into the residential area to the north. The applicant has provided a revised landscape plan that was included in your packet that would include a row of 8-foot Techni arborvitae that would provide that screening, as recommended by the Planning Commission. So in regard to the variances, both staff and the Planning Commission believe that the variance criteria have been met here. The practical difficulties are the location of this site adjacent to the freeway, and also the excessive green space between the lot line and the on-ramp that's located here. There's 40 feet of green space So there's adequate separation between that, but between the drive aisles here. So the variances do seem reasonable. And again, in regard to the parking variance with that traffic or the parking study that was done, there would be adequate parking provided. Interestingly, going back to 2000 when the hospital was expanded, there wasn't a parking variance granted at that time. It was just based on the parking study that was done. That study has proven to be accurate over time as parking has not been a problem. But this time we wanted to make sure that we did cover the variance. So in conclusion, staff and the Planning Commission believe that the request is reasonable, the use is permitted, the building setbacks are all met, height requirements are met, the existing roadways would support the system, or would support the addition, and the hospital itself provides a vital asset to the community. So with that, staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval subject to the findings and conditions in your staff report.
Thank you, Director Teague. Member Swenson.
Director T, can you walk me through exactly, I know how an ambulance gets in and I'm not worried about them finding where they need to go. So walk me through which way a resident would bring someone in on an emergency.
They could, or they would, enter in off 65th here. I guess a couple of options. Yeah, probably. Come around. There's a front entryway here where they would have.
I noticed the front entryway. My concern is that we have a very clear entranceway in for someone in an emergency, and it's signed really well. And we know that we have a number of elderly people that don't use 70th Street anymore because it has roundabouts on it. And I like the roundabout here. I'm not against it. I'm just concerned that it be really clear where you bring someone and drop it off. And that was my only question.
There's multiple options here. Maybe that's a question for the applicant.
I'll wait and hold it for the applicant. Sure. Okay, that was my only.
Carrie, just to follow up on that, is that entrance that we just passed going north, is that being retained? That's the current...
That's my understanding.
Okay, so that's multiple points of entry. Okay,
right.
Thanks.
Member Brindle.
Regarding parking, does the parking study that was done take into account the parking needs for 6363 France?
Yes.
In addition to the hospital?
Yes.
Okay.
That's all included.
Great, thank you.
Member Bennett.
Microphone, it won't turn on again this evening. Director Teague, a couple of questions. Can you please show us where the helipad will be, where it is currently and where it will be relocating to?
Certainly. The existing helipad is located out in front of the building, this general location, and it will be relocated to the roof of the existing building, this location right here.
Okay. That is something that we do see some correspondence from residents about, so I was concerned about it moving closer to the neighborhood, although it's moving farther away from the single-family home neighborhood to the north and a little closer possibly to some multi-unit housing to the east. However, I do understand that there's the buffer of the parking ramp and also some other office buildings.
Right.
Okay, then my other question, thank you for the explanation about the arborvitae. That was one of the questions I came in. I have a follow-up question to Member Brindle's question, and that is, with the contemplated use or the reliance on use of the ramp on the west side of France Avenue, are the potential cross-parking needs for visitors and staff of the proposed development at 6500 France being taken into account?
They would not. That project would be looked at on its own with that connection that they're contemplating, the Skyway. That's more for convenience for patients of the hospital to move back and forth. It wasn't the anticipation that users of that 6500 project would use the hospital ramps for their parking.
What is the height in feet of the parking ramp to the west of France Avenue at this point?
That I don't know off the
I'm
top of
sorry,
my
I
head.
should have emailed that to you earlier. But here's one of my concerns. So I heard in the Planning Commission discussion that there is structural sufficiency to add some levels. However, depending on what the height is right now, and I know we have an 8-story, 8 times 12 maximum on the east side of France. However, we are attempting to keep height down to the west side of France because of its adjacent, the lie of the land to the adjacent single-family home neighborhoods to the west and south, and then also there is some impact. I noted from the maps in the packet that there is a closer distance to the neighborhood to the north on the west of France than the east of France because of the curve of 62. So I guess my question is, what is the development capacity? Understood that there's the structural sufficiency to add those layers. What is the height limitation and how much room remains? If
Yeah,
any?
they would be subject to the height regulation for that site. I would have to check that too. I don't know that off the top of my head. But if it does exceed what the height requirement is for that site, they would have to come in for a variance on that.
Thank you.
Anyone else for Director Teague? I've got a couple of quick questions for you. With respect to the landscaping that was proposed at planning, and they've adjusted the plan for that, am I correct that that's all reflected in the what they call the overall planting plan that was received by you on 5/29/13?
Correct, yeah.
So that could be a potential condition added here, because it's not otherwise referenced in your conditions.
It's not in the staff report. I did incorporate that in the resolution that you would be considering. So I added subject to the landscape plan as revised on 5/29/13 in addition to the original landscape plan that was submitted. So it should be covered in your conditions that are before you.
All right. And then this may be for Mr. Rickert, but there were several questions at the Planning Commission addressing the issue of temporary emergency parking being a potential issue. And I think we should have that on the record here at the council as well, if you want to address that. Is it or is it not a concern as they go through potential construction here if it were approved?
Mayor and members of the council, I did not specifically look at the difference between a handicap spot and a regular spot. I know that they have in excess of what's required for handicap spots, so I didn't look at that. That may be a better question for the applicant to answer than I, as far as how they're going to utilize those spaces. At the Planning Commission meeting, they did talk about redesignating some of those spots along the north end of the building from handicap to non-handicap, so I mean that may be a better question for
All right, we'll check with the applicant. Thank you. All right, anything else for Director Teague?
Mayor, I have a question for Chuck since he's up here. I looked back to the old minutes from the last project, and that Drew Avenue intersection and passageway was a concern. It got widened, some things were done, but there's still that multiple stop intersection.
Yep.
Is the traffic, anticipated traffic patterns diverse enough where you're not concerned about that intersection and Drew and 65th?
Yeah, the amount of traffic that's going to be generated from this new development or the small increment of additional space that would actually generate traffic, the majority of the space is just going to be redesignated or larger emergency room space, more larger urgent care space. So that's really not generating much more traffic. We did assume some increase, but not a lot. The increment of new hospital space that would generate, we assumed a 10% employee increase. That was, I believe, 36 trips total in that AM peak hour was what we assumed as an increase. That little increment did not impact, that intersection.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Mr. Rickert. Mr. Grumman, you led the conversation at the Planning Commission. If you want to lead your team out and introduce yourself, give us your full name and business address, and then I think we'll try to keep it under 20 minutes for the total presentation.
We will certainly try our best to do that. Thank you so much. My name is Rob Grumman. I'm the Vice President of Facilities and Operations for Fairview Southdale Hospital. Appreciate the chance to present our project tonight to the council. I also want to thank the various departments of the city who have helped us in terms of getting ready for this, and reviewing our plans, and that's been very helpful. I won't go through the list of people tonight in the interest of time. We are planning to build a new emergency care facility on the front of our building. We're pleased to share those plans with you tonight. Members of our team that will be here tonight, our team consists of HGA architects. Dunham is our engineer. Owner and project representative is the owner's representative, is Walker and Associates, and our construction manager partner is Knutson Construction Services. I'm going to turn the presentation over in a minute to our partners from from HGA. I'm sorry. Excuse me, HGA. Sorry. I was meeting with your competitors earlier this afternoon, and so I must have LRB.
That was a secret meeting, though.
Yeah, that was a secret meeting. And,
they're coming in the door now.
To be presented later on here, so not this evening. But we have HGA here tonight. Brian Lubin is also going to speak on behalf of Walker, on behalf of addressing the issues around the variances. And that's Russ Williams, a colleague of mine on the executive committee, is going to spend a little bit of time talking to you about the need for this project. And then we're certainly happy to answer questions. And those questions that were raised here to Planner Teague, we're certainly ready to address those as well. So I'll ask the HGA team to come up and share with you a little bit about our plan.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Grumman.
Did we were looking for the finished board that we left here last time. Can we grab that? We thought that was going to be here, so thank you.
I'm Vicki Hooper with HGA. I'm the project manager on the ED project. Just give a quick overview of the scope of the project. As Director Teague noted, the building's about 89,000 square feet. The primary portion of the ED, of course, is on the main level, combination of ED and urgent care. Second level of about 20,000 square feet, which on day one will open with 18 observation rooms that'll be used by the ED and also for chronic care. And the lower level is about 28,000 square feet. It's off where the cafeteria is right now. That houses mostly administrative offices, mechanical, electrical, and support services. Entire building is in addition a small amount of remodeling, and I think a couple of people had mentioned entrances. Amy will show that on the plan, but essentially the existing ambulance garage is actually being remodeled to a second pedestrian entrance, which will have access directly from the garage, and then the new front entry. And I think probably that demands a little bit of pointing at a site plan, so I'll turn this to Amy.
Okay. My name is Amy Dauma. I am also with HJ Architects and Engineers.
Your microphone isn't working that well, I think.
Okay. Can you hear me if I use this microphone or not?
A little, yeah.
Okay, so I'm Amy Dauma with HGA Architects and Engineers in Minneapolis. I'm the project designer for this project. And so if we can get a visual, I suppose that would be Jennifer as well. Okay. Okay. So this is the overall site plan for the development, and as it was noted, the primary site circulation on the north side of the development now is a rotary, and we are providing a drop-off area and an entry from the rotary for both 6363 France as well as the new ED, which is located in this zone here. In addition to that entry, there is a new entry that was mentioned earlier that is being provided on the east side of the hospital, and it is directly across from the parking ramp. And this was done for a couple of reasons. One was just for convenience for patients, but also it was done for public safety for pedestrians, because right now there's the tendency for people to come from the parking ramp directly down to this entry. Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So directly down to this entry, and the thought was that by having a more convenient entry directly on the east side of the hospital, it would encourage people just to cross in one location and not have as many crossing points as exists right now.
So if I'm in a total panic and I'm bringing my 8-year-old in and I've lost all sense of common sense, where am I going to go and how am I going to navigate that clearly?
Sure. So
I wish I still had an 8-year-old, but that would be a grandchild at this point. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So there's two primary options. One is if you were to park and then go into the building.
No, I'm going to be carrying this child in because
Okay.
I'm going crazy, so.
Okay, so then you would come in the way that you do right now, and you would just continue beyond the existing entry to the rotary. You would go around the rotary and drop off here at the new entry. And then presumably you would eventually be parking in the garage on this corner as it is done right now.
I love the idea of expanding this. I need you to make it really clear if we pass this that that's what you need to do, because having been a parent going crazy occasionally when I've done something stupid with my child, that's a kind of a tough thing to get all the way around and end up at that one entrance. And you want to make sure that you go in the right door right away. So that's the only, I love the fact you're adding on, this is our hospital. I think it's great. However, I want to make sure that our patients can get there really clearly.
Okay.
Right now, there's a drop-off at that side entrance.
There is.
So is there going to be a
this,
drop-off at the new side entrance as well?
There's not a drop-off here. This drop-off actually will remain.
It'll stay. So you add an additional ingress.
But is that connected directly to the emergency room still?
It is.
It goes to the reception
So
area.
There is a public corridor that connects all the way along here, so you can actually come in this entry, or this entry, and end up in the same place. And it's along the exterior, so it's easy to navigate.
Okay.
And I've done the diagonal. It was me dropping me off, but and I know what you're saying. Crossing the traffic there, it's going to be a lot better just to go directly in if you've parked yourself.
You're supposed to call 911 and let them.
Well, what do you do?
So then looking at the massing of the building, it was influenced in part by the rotary and in part by the existing building, and we were trying to pick up on the curves of the existing building but give a little bit more contemporary feel to the building. And so anyway, it is still a curved facade, but it does have a little bit different material orientation. So I think, Vicki, if I can have you help me pull this over. Thank you. So the majority of the building is comprised either of glass or of metal panel. And on this board, we have two types of metal panel shown. The first is a blue-green metal panel that actually changes color a bit depending on the lighting conditions. There's a second metal panel that is used on the back side of the building, and that's a simpler gray material. And then there are a couple of different types of glass. There is some clear glass, some vision glass in certain areas, but most of the glass is translucent, and that was done for patient privacy. And so these are two examples of the translucent glass that will be used. There's a little bit of stone on the project. You can see at the base of the glass facade there's an area well and a planter wall that has a little bit of stone veneer on that. And then at the ambulance garage there is cast stone, and that was a material selected for durability. So that is around the ambulance garage and the doors. So any questions on the materials?
Questions on the material?
Okay.
Mayor Hovland, Mayor Hovland, members of the council. My name is Brian Lubin. I'm a project manager with Walker and Associates in Minnetonka. And as part of our submittal, we asked for two variances. One was a setback variance, one was a parking variance. And I think Mr. Teague and Mr. Rickard have described those fairly well. If you have any questions, we'll be glad to stand by and answer those questions, but I'm going to turn it back to Russ Williams, who will talk about the business purposes and the need for this new addition.
All right. Mr. Lubin, you may, who wants to address that issue that was raised earlier, raised in the Planning Commission as well, about temporary emergency parking? Where is that going to take place?
The temporary emergency parking, as people are dropping off.
Right. During construction, you're going to be pretty busy around there, and people are still going to have emergencies. So
we're working through those issues right now. And it will change as construction goes back and forth. We have to complete portions of the project, and so that'll kind of be in flux as we go through. But for the most part, though, we'll always have temporary emergency parking for everyone to come to the emergency entrance. So
Okay.
it's a work in progress right now.
All right, Mr. Grumman, you may have a comment.
Yeah, the east entrance right now is going to stay open until we actually open the entrance on the new location. So people will come in, drop off folks at that location. They'll park in the parking ramp. So that will basically
They'll come in
stay
the same way they've always come in to
Exactly.
get to the ER.
It'll stay the
until
same.
this is done.
Right, exactly.
All right.
And
Good.
if I may, to your point, Councilmember Swenson, about location, is that we are working diligently right now on making sure that the signing on the entire campus, which is not part of our application now, we know we'll have to come back, it becomes a part of this, because we know we've got to get people to the right doors in the right location. So
Thank you.
that's clearly a very legitimate question we're working on.
All right, and then bear with me a second. What about construction parking? You're going to have a lot of people working over there. Where are they going to park?
The construction workers themselves will be parking in our parking ramp. We designate a certain area where we want them. There'll be probably some of them in the east ramp and some in the west ramp. That's what we did with our big OR project. That worked out quite nicely. I might, if you'll indulge me for a minute to talk about the parking for a second. We are very cognizant of the total parking on the campus. And as I mentioned to the Planning Commission, probably before any formula kicks in, we'll know about the need for additional parking, because we're in the extreme customer service business, and between our physicians and our staff and our patients and their guests, we know we need to make sure we have enough. Today we have about 22,051 spots between the two ramps. Our high point, and we have parking data that goes back quite a ways, it's very sophisticated. It tells us by hour how many cars are in both ramps at that time. And our peak in the recent past history, as far as we could go back, was about 1,690 cars, which leaves us a gap of about 300 plus cars yet. Our normal, on a day like today, for instance, we peaked out at about 1,500, and we have a fairly high census in our hospital. We had a very busy OR schedule. It does, in fact, include all the people, the physicians, the staff, and the patients in both the physicians building 6363 as well as 6405. So that number is inclusive of all of those people on the site. To your question about the parking from across the street at 6500, at the moment we're not considering that in our numbers, because at this time that notion of connecting via Skyway has not yet been determined, and we haven't. We've talked with a developer about that, but we have not yet agreed to do that. So, good. Any other questions about any of those matters?
All right. Thank you. That was Member Bennett.
Just a quick response
Mr. Grumman.
to Mr. Grumman. Even without a Skyway, it's possible, it was contemplated at one point that people would park. I know that you're later to this discussion regarding that site at 6500 France than others who've been before the council in terms of the Ebenezer and partnerships. But I would think that now that the conversation is moving in that direction, that it definitely should be considered what the needs of that building are going to be, particularly with visitors and the like.
And we certainly have talked about that. We don't have numbers at this point in time, but we've considered that possibility. At some point in time, you asked the question earlier about could we expand that ramp. Physically, that ramp could go up 3 additional levels. That would create a height restriction or issue for a variance. And I'm not sure we want to do that, because we also know that from the earlier days of approving that ramp, and that was done before I was here, but I understand there was a great deal of concern from some of the neighbors about the height of that ramp. So we'd have to deal with that issue again. And the neighbors were actually not on the north side of 62. They were basically on the adjacent to the 6500, the Point of France individuals. So we'd have to go through that whole process. But to your point, yes, we would have to consider that at some point. The 6500 site, to the best of our knowledge, and we don't know all the details, but to the best of our knowledge, they're providing adequate parking for their residents. For if there is a transitional care unit in there, there would be enough for the patients and their families. So we believe that there is supposed to be enough parking on that site to take care of their needs. I understand that people may very easily park in our ramp, and certainly if we got Skyway connected, that would add another component to it. But we don't have those numbers, to be very honest with you.
Sure. I can foresee 2 issues with height, one being the visual that you describe and whether residents to the west, south, or north. Right. But a second issue is the noise reflection, and my understanding that solid surfaces like that act as a reflector for noise, and it could end up putting freeway noise even further back in that neighborhood to the north.
Absolutely. Point well taken.
All right, Mr. Williams.
Hello, my name is Russ Williams. I'm the Vice President of Operations at Fairview Southdale Hospital, and I have accountability for the emergency department. I hope we all can agree that a high-quality emergency department is a critical resource for any great and thriving community. And even though we do have some physical limitations and challenges in our current space, I do want to have you all rest assured that we do provide absolutely excellent care. A relatively recent study was done, and it was found that in the city of Edina, we have the best cardiac event survivorship in the country. And what that means is that if you have a heart attack in the city of Edina, you are more likely to survive that than in any other city in the entire country. In part, that is due to the phenomenal physicians, nurses, and staff that we have at Fairview Southdale Hospital, and also a wonderful partnership with Edina Fire and the rest of the EMS community. We're also a primary stroke center and have been designated that by the Joint Commission and have absolutely outstanding results in stroke care, among other things as well. And we're also one of only 3 hospitals recently recognized in AARP magazine as being one of the safest hospitals in America. It was the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, I believe it was Regions, and then it was Fairview Southdale Hospital. The current emergency department at Southdale was built to see 30,000 patients a year. In 2012, we saw just shy of 43,000 patients in that space. Given the growth and also the aging of population, we certainly know that there will be a greater demand for unscheduled ambulatory and emergency services in the future. What we're proposing is to expand not only the overall size of the department, but the way the rooms are laid out in the department as well, to accommodate the ever-increasing capabilities and technologies necessary to provide cutting-edge medical care, especially emergency care. Feel strongly that this community deserves this new emergency department, and by building what we're proposing, we will not only provide a greater ability to care for patients and a greater experience, but will position the emergency department of Fairview Southdale to care for the residents of Edina well into the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Williams. Questions? Member Sprague.
Thank you. I have a question on just operations and how is the expansion going to address the queue times, the wait times in the emergency room? Because that's been an issue that I've heard in the community. And I know your level of care is extremely high, and you do a great job at the hospital once the patient is in. But I know, given the demographic you've described, and some accompanying issues that the patients come in with, it can cause some queue times for the other patients. So,
definitely, there's been a significant amount of just simple process improvement to address that. But when you've got a 5-pound sack of flour and you continue to try to put 7 pounds of flour in it, some of it spills over the sides. And maybe a crude example, but I think one that plays very well. So the simple fact that we'll be adding additional rooms will allow us to treat people that much more quickly, especially during those peak times, the Monday evening starting at about 4 o'clock when we know those patients are coming. There's also the second level of the emergency department is also an observation area. There are a number of individuals that will come into the emergency department that may need to be observed for 4, 6, 8, 12 hours. Right now, we don't have a specific area in which to care for those patients, so often they will remain in the emergency department in a bed, taking up space that someone else in the lobby could come back. So with this portion of the project that's also observation, the patient can move up to a much more appropriate care setting for what they need at that specific time, opening a room up for somebody that needs that urgent or emergent care. The third piece would be the inclusion of urgent care in this as well, to where we'll now have 2 different tracks of care, so that the lower acuity patients, the one that may just have an earache or dental pain, something much more simple, can go through a much quicker track of care, appropriate level of resources, rather than going through the same process as somebody with chest pain or something much more significant can feel. So really trying to address it from every angle to address those queue times.
So it's operations improvements along with the physical improvements that complement what you're doing in the operations side.
Yes.
I might add that along with that is on the observation space above, part of that will also be for chronic care management. So to Russ's point, oftentimes you'll get somebody coming to the ER who needs to be put on a drip line for 4 or 5 hours, and right now they would go into the ER, take a room. Now they'll go up to the second floor and so they won't take a room in the actual emergent care area. So we'll get people cleared out of there faster to hopefully put people through there faster. Also, because we now have space to allocate, we've actually created what's called a results waiting area. So you might have somebody that's been in an ER room in an emergency situation for an hour or two, and now they're waiting for a test to come back before they're ready to be released. And if they're not going up to observation, they would go to this results area, waiting area, thus also clearing a room. So if you take the sum total of all those things, we think we'll put people through this facility a lot faster. And those who need to get into an emergency care room will be in there a lot faster because we'll be clearing rooms. The turnover essentially is much faster.
Okay, so you have more staging areas basically to more effectively triage the people as they're coming through the door.
Correct.
Okay, that's good to hear. I appreciate the elucidation.
Yep.
Member Brindle.
Thank you. In listening to the Planning Commission, I understand that both urgent care and emergency care patients will come to the same place now, which is great because as an individual, you sometimes don't know which one to go to, so you end up going there and then having to move. How are the two going to interact? If I walk in there, am I going to go to one place and they're going to tell me where I need to go, or how's that going to work?
You'll walk in and you'll come right to our triage desk, lovingly referred to as care traffic control. And then you'll have the conversation with the nurse at that point in time. The nurse will then direct you appropriately whether or not urgent care is an appropriate, the right service mix for you, or whether or not you need to be into the emergency department. It's all within the same physical space, because occasionally you'll have the patient that goes into urgent care and decompensates and needs to be moved over. The rooms are all identical, so you wouldn't even need to move the patient. We can bring the resources, and we're talking 20 steps from an emergency department room to an urgent care room.
All right.
Member Bennett.
I have a question that perhaps is better addressed to design architecture, but was there any consideration given to shifting the entrance pattern so as not to pull people who are in distress through a roundabout, which are great traffic management tools, but not necessarily the best for people who are in crisis or older people. So was there any thought of bringing people up the west side? I understand there's some grade difference, but I know that used to be your main entrance at the north. And there's that shift of main entrance now to the southwest corner, but is that an option? Not trying to design your project for you, just trying to find an answer to sending people.
I don't remember exactly the number of variations that we went through in planning and looking at that, because that's certainly a critical issue. But we ended up where we did. It's a compromise between distance from the main road to get onto the site, being able to move traffic around, get them to that front door, the interior design of the space, and you sort of go through all the variations to try to find the optimum location. We realize that people are going to actually have to drive a little further onto the site to get there. We think we can do that via good signing to make sure they get to the right place. But we understand that people are going to have to go a little bit further. But yes, we looked at, I can't tell you the number of variations we looked at to try to see if we couldn't get them at the best possible location. We think this is the best considering all the different factors that had to go into that.
Sure, and again, I wasn't talking about location of your entrance. I'm just more concerned about sending people through a roundabout to get there. So it's just the way that they're getting there, not where they're going.
Right. And we went through variations of that as well, Councilmember Bennett, and tried to figure out, again, how to move people on the site, get them from both sides. There are some easements that we have with IREIT and IREIT has with us on the site, and we're trying to be mindful of all these different, so you're looking at all these different factors, frankly.
Other questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
Good. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to open this matter up for public testimony. This is a public hearing. If anyone wishes to come forward and testify, use one of the side podiums, if you would, and give us your name and address.
Mayor Hovland and members of the City Council. Martin Kirsch, 6725 Penn Avenue South, and a member of the Board of Trustees of Southdale Hospital. This project is really critical to the continued success of Southdale Hospital, and so I would appreciate your positive support for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirsch. Anyone else? All right, seeing no one coming forward and hearing no one saying they wish to speak, is there a motion to close the
So
public
moved.
hearing?
Second.
Got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And Member Swenson.
I'll move this issue.
Second.
All right. Member Swenson, let me ask you, I was looking for the information Director Teague gave us for the conditions, and I was thinking that I didn't find a reference to that May 29, 2013.
So you want the planting plan that's included in our packet included in this?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, the condition
It's there.
doesn't
It's in
doesn't
our
have the
packet.
right date in the condition. I see you redacted that. You added that date. Yep.
I did.
Yep.
Yep.
So, okay.
So that's the third dot on condition 1.
Correct.
To add and may.
And overall planting plan dated May 29, 13.
I would accept that. Would my second?
Yes.
All right.
I think this is a really
Discussion?
important project. It's
Comment?
why I wanted to move it forward. The hospital has proved to be a wonderful asset to our community. It's one of our largest employers.
It's our largest.
Okay. And I think, you know, the statistics of what we've done between the hospital and our ambulance service and saving lives is really important. This is just taking that another step. So I'm very excited about this, and I'm very thankful that they want to invest in our community.
Good. Other comments before we vote?
I would just like to say, I know
Member
that the emergency room and urgent care model has been changing rapidly out there. And I was talking with a business colleague the other day, and the issue of Fairview came up. So it was almost like you heard the thoughts out there in the marketplace, and you've come forward with this answer. And I think this is going to give you the long-term success you need. I know that the margins are very slim, and this should help you stay here for a long, long time and continue to be successful, to your point. So,
Good, thanks. I think this is all part of the wonderful service that you've rendered to our community since the hospital was built in the mid-'60s. And it's just helping people in Edina and our neighboring communities, Richfield, Bloomington, Eden Prairie, live longer, better lives. And we applaud you for that, for thinking about what the needs of our communities are. So, Member Brindle.
Just have an anecdotal comment. In March, I spent the better part of a day at the emergency room with my mother-in-law, and had a chance. She was in Code Red room and then moved to a side room, but had a direct shot to the room, the entrance where the ambulances come in. And I don't know where you put all those people. They just kept coming in, and it was multiple ambulances at a time, and we felt guilty in a room. We were just waiting for her doctor to come so we could admit her, and it took him hours to get there. That's one of the challenges. Another way that the rooms upstairs are going to be very handy, because we had to just sit there and wait until her doctor could admit her. But I was amazed to knowing that we were going to see this. It was a particularly interesting day to just watch all the workings, and the staff is beyond compare. Just terrific.
Good. Well, a favorable vote is required by a majority of the council members present to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Unanimously carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next public hearing matter before us is a final rezoning matter. We've seen preliminary approval on this project. Final rezoning from PCD3 to PUD, planned unit development, final development plan and final plat for Lund's Food Holdings, property located at 7171 France Avenue. All of this embodied in ordinance number 2013-6 and resolution 2013-45. Director Teague again has the staff presentation for us on this particular matter that is back before us.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, a site that you're all very familiar with on France Avenue on the promenade. This is a look at the existing Byerly's building that would be torn down to accommodate the new 47,000 square foot Byerly's building, a series of 3 apartment buildings, 2 of which would have retail on the first level, totaling just over 21,000 square feet. Overall, between the three buildings, there would be 234 rental apartments. Just to quickly review the history, this all started with a sketch plan about a year ago. This was the sketch that was before the Planning Commission, or the City Council and the Planning Commission. Loading docks that faced the promenade and the building kind of pulled back onto the site. Based on the recommendations of the City Council and the Planning Commission, the applicant came back with a preliminary plan, as on the screen here, that was tweaked slightly as it went through the process. Ultimately, this was the preliminary plan that was ultimately approved for this site. So now the request before the City Council is final rezoning from PCD 3 to PUD, final development plan, and a final plat. The plans are consistent with the plans that were approved by the City Council at preliminary approval. A few minor tweaks, several of which were recommended by the City Council. The landscaping was increased down at the southeast corner. This location here, they've provided the detail of those covered walkways also. Just to quickly walk through the buildings, and again, the applicant will present their materials board to provide greater detail. The buildings would be brick, stucco, stone, precast concrete, metal, and glass. Again, consistent with the plans that we reviewed at the preliminary development plan. In terms of site access, that too has all remained the same. There will be a right-in, right-out on France Avenue. That would be a new access onto France. There would be a right-in, right-out on Hazelton Road. Also, you may recall the property owner to the east wasn't on board at the time of preliminary development plan review. They have negotiated that, and so this roadway will encroach slightly onto the adjacent property, and they are agreeable to that. We've recently, as late last week, discovered that the property owner to the north has some objections to this project, and we'll be here this evening to speak to some of the concerns that they have. Again, the loading docks in the same location as before for the grocery store, this location here. Deliveries to the retail space would happen in front of the building. Trash enclosures would also be within those buildings. Full complement of landscape trees around the perimeter of the site that well exceed our minimum code requirements. In regard to signage, and the Planning Commission had quite a bit of discussion in regard to signage. Generally, the sign plan that's proposed here meets our underlying zoning district. There are a few exceptions. The first is the 71 France entrance sign that would be located on France and Hazelton, kind of a wayfinding, but that is a sign that wouldn't be allowed under our traditional zoning on the site. With the PUD ordinance that's before you, these regulations would be put right into the PUD ordinance that would dictate the regulations on this site. An additional signage that's proposed that wouldn't be allowed by the code is this small sign here. This would be located at the entrance to the promenade. As the council probably recalls, we don't allow signage that faces any public park, so this would be an exception to that rule. However, we're wanting to invite pedestrians along the promenade into the development, so an exception would seem reasonable here. The next sign that wouldn't be code compliant is there are two monument signs. It would be this sign here, proposed, one at the France Avenue entrance and the other at Hazelton. And the code allows 100 square foot of sign area for that primary sign on France. A secondary off of a side street the code allows up to 50 square feet. The applicant is requesting a 100 square foot sign for that secondary sign. And that would be this sign located right here off Hazelton. So the sign that's indicated in this drawing is 100 square feet in size. So they're requesting that flexibility as well. So again, the ordinance that's before you sets the zoning, and the regulations would be established. So all of the setback and height regulations as proposed get put into that ordinance. The uses would be allowed under our PCD3 zoning district, so the uses would actually be allowed under the conventional zoning. Overall density of the project would be 24 units an acre, again, per the preliminary plan. Traffic and parking studies that we talked about in the preliminary review indicates that there would be adequate parking and our existing roadways would support the project. You may recall the applicant is proposing to plat the property. This was the preliminary plat. The site exists as 2 lots today, and they're proposing 4. So this is a look at the final plat that's before you. There would be easements established over all of the utilities. In regard to park dedication, because of the plat, the applicants required a park dedication fee of $5,000. A portion of those funds would be used for the promenade ponding project that's, again, consistent with the promenade plan. This ponding area is not necessary for the drainage on the site. There's an underground drainage tank in the proposed parking lot for France. So this would be a water feature associated with the promenade. So a portion of those park dedication funds would be used to acquire the land in order to establish that ponding project. So that would be reduced from the park dedication fee. URS has been engaged by the city to develop those plans in detail. This would be reviewed by the Parks Department before ultimately coming to the City Council for final approval. But you might note that the trail is now located on the west side of that pond. The preliminary and proposed plan had indicated that on the east side. That is on the west side. Again, it more engages the promenade. Mm-hmm. There was some discussion at the Planning Commission in terms of when the park dedication fees would be paid. The condition that is included from the Planning Commission and within the staff report and approving resolutions would be that they would be paid at the time of a building permit. The applicant has requested some flexibility on that and have suggested that park dedication fees would be paid at the time of certificate of occupancy. So they'll be asking for some flexibility there. So in conclusion, staff and the Planning Commission believe that this request is reasonable. The PUD zoning is appropriate. The plans are consistent with the comprehensive plan. Again, it creates an efficient and creative use of the property. Byerly's is pulled up to the street as suggested in our comprehensive plan and recommended by the City Council in terms of when that was reviewed for the sketch plan. This is actually the first development that engages the promenade and actually provides a connection from the promenade into their development and all the way through to France Avenue. They have pledged sustainable principles that were recommended by the City Council at preliminary approval in an attempt to achieve at least a 10% energy savings with the design. So with that, staff and the Planning Commission are recommending approval subject to the findings and conditions that are outlined in the approving resolutions. So that would include final rezoning, final development plan, and final plat, and also the ordinance amendment that would establish the PUD. With that, I can stand for questions.
Carrie, at this point, do we want to mention the connection between this public hearing and the next public hearing?
Oh, right. There are roadway improvements associated with the project. That's the Hazelton roadway improvements and roundabout that are associated with that. So we could have that presentation made now and could have one public hearing, essentially combining the two hearings, if you would like.
Are you anticipating that some people that are coming to speak are just concerned with this particular development, or they're concerned with the particular Hazelton Road improvements?
There are some that are concerned with both.
Then it might be more logical to at least learn about the Hazelton Road improvements, and so that we can get both answers at the same time. Do you have an opinion on that, Mayor?
Matter as well.
I will turn that over to Wayne for the presentation on that.
All right. Before Wayne steps in, are any questions relative to this phase of staff presentation?
I have some, but I'd rather hold them until Wayne is done.
Okay.
That's okay.
over to Chuck Rickard with WSP. They're the consulting firm that actually put together the feasibility study that's in your packet tonight. With that, Chuck can take it from here.
Thanks, Wayne. Mayor, members of the council, we'll quickly go through.
Mr. Rickard, identify yourself, please, and your business address.
Sorry. Chuck Rickard, WSP and Associates. Our address is St. Louis Park. I can't think of it. 701 Golden Valley. So, my mind just went blank on our address. Anyway, we're here to talk about the Hazelton Road improvements associated with the Byerly's site and some of the surrounding improvements also. The project that we're talking about is from France Avenue to the promenade on Hazelton Road, as you can see on the map here. Some of the initiation and some of the issues that we initially started looking at as part of this included, the site redevelopment of the Byerly site and their access configurations coming in and out of the site. There's some poor pavement conditions along Hazelton Road in this area. And, the parking adjacent to the roadway, specifically on the Rue de France side and the Guitar Center side of the road, as these improvements impact that. Some of the sidewalks in this area are in pretty poor condition. And we're looking at how we can improve that pedestrian crossing at the promenade. And I think the proposal that we've come up with is going to help that also. Existing conditions, it's a 30-mile-an-hour road. It's a collector street. It was originally constructed back in 1972. It's 51 feet face-to-face of curb width. It's striped as a 4-lane facility right now with, as you're approaching France Avenue, some of those lanes turn into turn lanes, but it's primarily a 4-lane section to the east. There's no parking on either side of the road. There's 5-foot sidewalks on both sides of the road, but they're right behind the curb. There's no boulevard provided at this time. The existing traffic counts in the area are about 7,600 daily trips, and looking at the projections in the transportation plan, we're anticipating in 2030 about 9,000 trips a day. So we're not up to that 4-lane section, the need for 4 lanes in that area. That's why the roundabout is a good consideration here. This is what we're proposing, a roundabout at the west entrance to Byerly's and the Guitar Center Rue de France, and then the access modifications, into the east entrance of the Byerly's and Rue de France there. So I'll go through some of the specifics of the proposal here. Here's the typical section, looking at a single lane in each direction through this section of the road, raised median with potential for some landscaping, 5-foot boulevards with sidewalks, behind the boulevard. So we're going to create that boulevard with the project also. Talk about the east access first. We're looking at a modified elliptical roundabout, so it's going to stretch it out a little bit, and that's primarily to accommodate the fire trucks going through the corridor. We worked with the fire chief, and as he looked at it, it does improve that flow east-west and from the west to the south into the Byerly site. So that improved that by making that a little more elliptical. We're removing the parking lot separation between Rue de France and the Guitar Center. So in this area to the north here is a separation between the two sites today. We are going to remove that, striping parking through there, but that will be a connection between the two with the roundabout. With this proposal, we'd be losing about 8 parking stalls from the Guitar Center site and about 4 parking stalls from the Szechuan Star on the southwest corner of the intersection.
What about on Rue de France?
Excuse me?
Any loss there?
The Rue de France is on this side up here.
Do you lose any?
Oh, not on this end. Over at the other intersection, we will lose. At the east intersection, we will lose a couple. This shows the truck fire truck turning movements on the top, where with the elliptical roundabout showing what those movements would be. We also show on the bottom two figures show what a WB50 truck would do going through this intersection, and it will be accommodated, no problem, through the intersection to get into the Rue de France and Guitar Center. The west access, the Rue de France, we will be modifying the Rue de France side of the intersection we will be eliminating the left turn out, making it a 3/4 access, so people cannot turn left out of that access anymore. They will have to go down to the roundabout. We are creating a left turn lane in, though, so today they're turning from a through lane into the site with no protection. They will have a left turn lane, into that site, and then they will be able to go right in, right out also. On the Byerly side, it will be a right in, right out at that location. The median that you see in red here is going to be, a colored concrete flush with the pavement to accommodate their parking or their truck dock, so trucks can get in and go through this. All their truck activity will be coming through this access, and they'll be able to get across that median island. So it won't be a raised island; it will be a flush island. We are working with Metro Transit on a bus stop. As you know, on their France Avenue project, there's an existing northbound bus stop on France. We're relocating it to Hazleton. With that, we will be looking at a bump out. We don't know the exact location yet. We're working with them on exactly where that'll be. It will be between that west entrance and France, but we're not exactly sure exactly where it's going to be in there. So in the location where that bus would be, we would be eliminating that the boulevard. The sidewalk would be right behind the curb in that location, but that would be where the bus stop would be. Some of the other improvements, I've kind of talked about these already. The 5-foot, there will be a 5-foot shoulder that's shown on here too, and we're proposing at this time to make that a gutter, a 5-foot gutter, similar to what we did on 70th Street. Although this isn't a bike route, it will give us that flexibility in the future if it would become a bike, some type of bike facility. Also, getting people over to the promenade, it gives us another option. It won't be signed as a bike route or anything, but it gives us that flexibility, with that 5-foot gutter. Again, I talked about the sidewalk and boulevard and the bus stop. We'll be providing enhanced crosswalks, with the Duratherm, like we have at other locations around town. We will be providing landscape medians and pedestrian level lighting through the corridor. And we will be improving the promenade crossing by providing that center median and providing a refuge between that landscape refuge, so people will only be crossing the one lane at a time rather than going all the way across. The flashers will still be there. Everything will be the same as it is today, but it will just give that refuge in the middle and a little less area that they're going to have to cross. There will be some right-of-way that's required. What you see in green on the screen is permanent right-of-way. The rest is easements to do the construction. Right now, our total project cost with everything is a little over $1 million to do this, and that includes a 10% contingency and 22% for engineering, administration, and finance. And all the funding for this project is proposed through the Centennial Lakes TIF district. I believe this is on the agenda later on also, correct? Our schedule, in May, the council ordered this public hearing for this. We brought this in front of the Transportation Commission, in May also. Got their comments. They were primarily in support of it. We had a neighborhood meeting last week. I think we had 5 people that showed up to the meeting, so and everybody who was there was in support of the project. We're here tonight right for the public hearing. If the project is approved, we're looking at developing plans and specs in July, and we could do bids as early as this fall, late summer, early fall, and start the construction, but it's really going to be dependent on how the Byerly site comes along, how the France Avenue project comes along, and coordinating all those together. If this would be started this year or if it would be pushed until next year. So we'd be coordinating with the Byerly's folks and the France Avenue project to determine exactly when the construction would be. In any case, we'd be looking at summer of 2014 for the final completion. With that, I'll open it up for questions.
Member Sprague?
Thank you.
Member Swenson.
At the promenade crossing, was there any thought given to making that Duraprint like your other enhanced crosswalks?
We could do that. I mean, that's something that we could look at.
That's kind of our new standard, and I like to get that consistency through the corridor.
I believe that
there's lighting in that.
And actually, it's a concrete crosswalk there, I believe.
That one is?
Yeah, because we have the in-road lighting that are set in concrete strips on the side.
Okay. What are the widths of the roundabout compared to the ones on 70th?
You know, I'm going to let Andy address those detailed questions. He can answer those better than I.
Yeah, I'm Andy Plowman with WSB, same address that he gave. So in terms of the roundabout size, this one's a little bit bigger now. It's a kind of a morphed, has multi-dimensions in terms of the radii. The easterly 3 roundabouts by the Galleria,
Right.
those are about 100 foot, and one is 105 foot diameter.
Okay.
This one is kind of a combination of as big as 133 foot, and at the smallest diameter, it's about 109, 110. Now, the west 70th Street one is 124 foot diameter, so it's a little bit bigger than that. And the reason why, having the discussion with the fire chief of getting through, that was the big movement. So there's a couple things you can do. You can either expand the entire roundabout to a bigger diameter, but to squish it a little bit allows that we didn't impact the neighboring properties any more than we had to, and still be able to get everything to work. So that's kind of the purpose of doing that.
So on 70th Street, would that have been a preferable model to have the elliptical for fire? Is that the general consensus?
Yeah, basically, meeting with the fire chief, he was expressing that, especially in the roundabouts to the east, that those are small.
A little tight.
Those are fairly small. The west one that we had at Valley View, he can get through much easier.
So we've learned as we've gone forward on this.
Correct.
On this application. Okay. And then, can you tell me a little bit about enhancements at the France Avenue intersection?
Well, most of those enhancements we're actually redoing as part of the PED improvement project, the France Avenue. Those
Hazelden, though, is not part of the scope of that project.
But where it connects to France, it actually is, because we're redoing the curb on that east curb the entire way. So as part of that, all the curb returns are redone, and thus we're creating more space. Now we're not, going across with new, crosswalks or anything.
That was my question, though. Since we're operating at this, we're doing this project at the intersection, should we be doing some type of enhancements across France at the same time?
Councilmember Sprague and Council, we can do that. We can add that to the project, is to do the painted the crosswalks, the north-south crosswalks on it. That's something that we did miss. So yeah.
Yeah, we actually do have north-south crosswalks, like the actual zebra crossing. We don't cross France with it.
I'm talking about taking the applications we're doing at 66, 70th, and 76 and applying that to this intersection.
So you'd apply crosswalks on the east-west movement also, or the north-south?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about, going across France from the residential side to the Byerly side, or vice versa.
What I hear you saying is you would also take the other mid-crossing enhancements and include them, or am I mistaken?
I'm not sure what you mean, mid-block?
The island, no,
the median. You're talking about the median, that part of the
Like the widening of the
reconstruction.
median, is that what you're saying?
Is
No,
that
we
what you're
would-
saying too, or you're just talking painted crosswalks
Well,
in the ground?
There's a couple of different things we're doing to enhance the pedestrian environment. We're doing the refuge island. Are we doing Duraprint on those, or are we
We're
just
doing, because it's
zebra?
concrete, you can't do the
Oh,
Duratherm.
same
but
thing
it's
as
a
that
thermal-
promenade, okay.
Thermoplastic, so it's black and white alternating. It's wider. They're 12 feet wide, total painted.
And then we have larger landings. So could we do any of that at the same time? It just makes sense to me, since we're trying to make France Avenue this rich pedestrian environment, and this is happening. We should be doing those two crossings, the east-west crossings as well. It seems to me.
Yeah, so you'd change the scope of that France Avenue project from 3 intersections to 4?
Or change the scope of this particular project to include those two crossings.
Mayor and Council, what we could do is add, if you do vote on this project in favor of the project, you could add that to the motion as to enhance the east-west movements of Hazelton and France Avenue with this project. And we could bid it out and price it out and see what it comes in, and at the time of award, we can see if we could afford it or not.
Okay, so if it were to pass, we'd add that to the motion. It just seems to me if we're contemplating bike lanes and, we have this connection it's a great connection into the neighborhood there, because that's a kind of a calm entryway, and then the L's, and you go up to 72nd.
Right.
It seems like an opportunity we shouldn't miss. My final question, Andy, is on Boulevard construction and the timing of that, since you referenced we're going through this project. What's going to happen with that? Is that retaining wall and the boulevard enhancement that's along the corridor, is that happening at the same time as the Byerly's?
Are we talking about France?
Yes.
Then? Yes. Yep. So what we're doing is with the construction of the Byerly's, they retained us to do the right in, right out as part of that. So that's actually been turned into Hennepin County it's a permit process. And the retaining wall will be built as part of the Byerly's construction.
Okay.
And then we're going to be coming through, we still have the sidewalk as part of the France Avenue project. And we'll change order it, or supplemental agreement will probably be, get it through MnDOT, and all we'll be doing is constructing the sidewalk to go in, behind there's 2 retaining walls. It'll go up, and it'll change location. Currently we have, in our plans, in the France Avenue plans, that the sidewalk was going to go in front of the retaining wall.
Yep.
Now it'll go behind and kind of follow up and go up to the level of the Byerly's entrance, basically.
And that's
then
still
come back down.
ADA compliant?
Correct, that's how it's
okay.
designed, yep.
Okay.
Not over 5% and that sort of thing.
There is a picture of it on the screen here. You can see this would be a retaining wall on the back side of the sidewalk, and this would be the retaining wall on the front side of the sidewalk here. And the sidewalk would come up between them and then provide the at-grade access right into Byerly's there, and then come back down to the intersection of Hazelton and France there. So.
And we've moved the bus stop, so there's no bus stop along
Yeah,
the
the bus stop that was on the corner
nice.
here, well, it was actually down a little bit further, would be now over on Hazelton. Yep.
Okay. Thank you for the details. It makes a difference. I appreciate it.
Yep.
With regard, sorry.
Yeah, Member Swenson is next in the queue, and then.
There were a couple questions on signage, and the only reason I'm asking you is for visual sightlines. So there's a 20-foot tall by 12-foot wide sign, 2 of them identical that have been requested. One by the entrance in the southwest corner into it, and I'm not sure exactly where that sign is. And then one on the Hazelton Road, I think between the entrance and the roundabout. And my question always, when you have a sign that big, is what happens to the sight lines of someone pulling back out, depending on where the sign is, and they're looking down the corridor, or trying to go around the roundabout if it's a Hazelton Road one. So I need an opinion as to what is safe and what is not.
I believe the sign on at the right in, right out is right back here. I believe that's where the new sign is going to be, and that's, it's behind the retaining wall, or it's well past where people would be pulling up to the intersection.
Okay, so the little rectangular line in the corner of the parking.
Yep, that's that one. Now, as far as the one at the roundabout, wasn't 100% sure. Well, I believe that sign is going to be right in here. So that would not, again, wouldn't block that, going around the roundabout.
Okay, so, but that's closer, and that's more within potentially as someone's approaching that roundabout, the visual. That's the one I'm the most concerned about, because I think it does sort of, if you're looking down to see who's coming and you're not used to roundabouts, I don't want anything to impede someone's ability to safely pull in.
Officially, all you need is 65 feet of sight distance because of people slowing down and whatnot. And there's, I guess I don't have it measured, but yeah, there is adequate. It's always, how much do you need to see, especially at a roundabout. With the slower speeds, it's actually less is better. I mean, especially in terms of Central Island, but I think we do have sufficient, based on the standards of roundabout design, sight distance officially there.
If you look at where my the arrow is right here, this is about where someone would pull up to,
right.
And if you look back to here, that sign is well back behind.
No, but as you're approaching it, you're anticipating. So you're looking to the left, and the first thing you're going to see before you get to that spot is the sign for anyone that's behind the crosswalk. So that was all. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear and it was safe.
That's not the pylon sign though, the one on the left?
No, that's that one.
That is that one.
Yes, it's big. It's 20 feet tall.
Why does it need to be up so high? I didn't mind the square footage of the sign itself, but I was wondering why it was mounted so high.
The developers.
Oh, we'll ask the
developer.
No problem.
Okay, I'm done.
All right, Member Brindle and Member Bennett.
Regarding the crosswalk, if we include crosswalks going east-west across France, are there sidewalks on that other side going east-west? I don't think there are. They're going north-south along France, but I don't know if they're going east-west along Hazelton.
Along Hazelton?
Yeah.
They're showing up in the elevation on page 6.
Is it?
Or the cross-section.
Yeah.
Well, it's showing
a 5-foot walkway on each side of the road.
There are.
There is on the
east-west?
south side, yeah. And currently there are push buttons at all 4 corners to go each direction.
Okay.
So yeah, there are. On the south side, it's right behind the curb.
Yep.
Okay, so that could be done. Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, and it would make sense to do as part of this project, just to get people across on their bikes or walking. And all right.
Councilmember Brindle and Council, when we look at this, the difference between the 3 other major intersections is that we're more than likely not going to have a safe haven in the middle for folks if they go midway across the intersection, because we would have to modify the median on it. So this would be really no different than the crosswalk that we're adding on the midway point of Southdale. We're going over to the office buildings where they don't have a substantial median or safe haven in the median of that one. So
you can
keeping that in mind, but
landing pads though you can increase. And the signal timing, or is that already
well,
done?
I was going to ask.
We can do that. We can play with the signal timing, or with the county to play with a little bit of the signal timing on that also, to give enough timing to get across. And that was one of the comments that we had at our open house from actually the owners of the First Memorial Edina Chapel were there, and they wanted to increase the signal timing to get across the roadway. And so we're going to be taking a look at that.
And the landing pads, because it seems to me they're very tight. The radius of the corners.
The landing pads on the corners?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we're bringing those up to the kind of the current ADA standards as well.
On the west side, but not on the east side.
First on the east side.
On the east side, we are. Yeah, as part of the.
I'm sorry, the opposite.
Right.
On the east side, not the west side.
Correct.
So as part of the scope change, if we were to go down that road, we could increase the radius on the west side, perhaps as well.
We'll take a look at it and see if we can do that. Yes.
Member Brindle, do you have more questions?
I'm going to assume, since we didn't talk too much about it, since fire trucks can get through the traffic circle, So can the trucks, because when they come out, they're going to have to do that same thing, are they not? If they're going to go west, they're going to need to do the right out, go around the circle, and then go west.
Yeah, they can, I mean, trucks, and that's why there's that truck apron in the middle, too, that if they have to drag their rear around it. The big thing with the fire truck as well is that they don't want to use the truck apron because, you know, kind of the jostling, and then it does slow you down a little bit by doing that. But yeah, all roundabouts are, you know, designed with the intent of getting trucks around it. You know, it just depends on what is your design vehicle. You know, some in rural areas you have farm machinery and whatnot, and we are in an urban area, you know, so it's a little bit different where, you know, we kind of have to determine what that design vehicle is.
Okay,
So,
thank you. That was my question.
Yep.
Member Bennett.
Thank you. Who received notice of the public meeting on the 28th of May, or to whom was it sent? Better question.
It was 1,000 feet from the end of the project. So from France Avenue, 1,000 feet to the west, and then from, you know, the promenade, 1,000 feet to the east. And then both directions, north and south.
I noticed that one of the comments made at the Transportation Commission was that now that neighborhoods are defined, we should start using that to define notice and mailing area for open houses. And I think particularly with projects of this type, where you're in a commercial area, that would be particularly helpful. I'm not sure that...
we don't have that as a part of our ordinance for legal notice, though.
No, it's not legally required. It's a practical issue. How do you notify people who may be concerned about something? And in this instance, that distance probably didn't reach a lot of people who might be surprised to see something constructed later.
We did take that comment into account, and we checked with the neighborhood folks to see if anybody has registered in that neighborhood, and we didn't have an email address to notify those. But if we,
sure,
when we do these projects, we're putting that on our list as to double check and make sure we get notices out to the leaders of those neighborhoods, so then they can spread the word also.
Sure. Yeah. So that is how the system is intended to work going forward. Understood.
But Member Bennett, we also may have that secondary, that geographic distribution functionality with City Extra down the road,
yes,
so that we could use that, the
another
people that
tool.
signed up. Yeah.
Yep, another way to reach people. Thank you. Then question, Director Houle, I believe, or Mr. Rickert, or Mr. Plowman. State aid streets, can we ban truck traffic on state aid streets?
No.
We cannot, Councilmember Bennett and Council, we cannot ban any vehicles if we're receiving state aid monies on a roadway itself.
Okay.
Nor can we can play around with the geometrics, the horizontal geometrics a little bit, which the roundabouts do as far as traffic calming, but we can't put vertical differentiations in a roadway like speed tables and such on state aid roads without losing the ability to collect gas tax monies on
We
those
can
roads.
make it a condition of approving something, but we can't do it across the board. We can't sign it, no truck traffic.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so then the follow-up question is, I know that with the roundabouts installed on West 70th, there was, and with some conditions of projects related to West 70th, there was some change in traffic patterns with some truck traffic. Is it anticipated that Hazelton will be influenced in the same way? And if so, what is the truck route of choice going to be?
I believe when the target was approved is that the council put a condition on the target development that no truck traffic deliveries could go down 70th Street between Trunk Highway 100 and France Avenue. I don't believe that on this road. We want to encourage that the truck traffic use Hazelton. That's because that's one of the areas, as you're looking at these facilities, that's the only way in and out for some of the facilities like Rue de France, Guitar Center, and then also the truck docks at Target access Hazelton Road itself.
Right, and I was just looking at it from a functional choice-making standpoint rather than a regulatory standpoint. It isn't that I thought we should regulate that or try to reduce it on Hazelton. It's that I don't know what the impact of this will be, of this proposed reconstruction with this feature will be. It's just a question that I have given what we saw with West 70th.
So you're asking if it will impact the driving behavior of the trucks?
Well, if it's a discouragement, do we have other routes? I mean, I know we have West 77th from Highway 100, and I know that we have York and Xerxes from 62. We have France connecting. So there's connectivity in the area. It's just a question of how we anticipate movement continuing in the area.
Yep, I would suspect that some of the very large truck, that like the WB 62s, the over-the-road trucks, the roundabout's designed that they can get through the roundabout. Mm-hmm. They'd be using the truck apron, but I would guess that they would tend to use York Avenue, possibly from the crosstown down to York Avenue, Xerxes, and then into the target delivery area, rather than maneuver through the roundabout on Hazelton Road.
I'm guessing that's what Target does now.
Yes, yeah.
York to Hazelton and come in on their loading dock on the south side there.
I believe they do, yes.
And Mr. Plowman, very helpful information about the relative sizes of the roundabouts. I believe that was Member Sprague's question. The parking spaces that are, Mr. Rickert said will be lost, are they in the right-of-way at this point? Where are those spaces located?
No, they are not. They are on their site.
So is one of the costs of this project then a reimbursement?
I guess that's a question that Wayne is working with the property owners as far as how the easements are going to be, acquired through here. But you can see it's these spaces, a reconfiguration of these spaces to the north, and then there's existing spaces right here that are being removed where that roundabout.
Councilmember Benton, Council, if you go forward with the project tonight, then our next step is to actually meet with the property owners and discuss the easements in detail. And we're anticipating that the easements are going to be donated like the rest of the easements along France Avenue are, because this really is a safety improvement to the properties and a kind of beautification of Hazelton Road itself. So we're anticipating that we would work with the owners to be sure that they're in agreement. One of the aspects of that is to analyze the parking spaces and to make sure that they're still are in conformance with the parking demands or requirements of those properties. So we still have a little bit of work, especially with we had a meeting yesterday with the Route of France folks where they had expressed some concerns about the layouts and such. So like I say, if you hear them out through the public hearing process here, and then like I say, if you go forward with the project, we definitely be working with those property owners, all 4 property owners, to make sure that everybody's in agreement with what we're doing.
Your answer raises 2 more questions, and that is, what is the process by which the roadway will be? Is it a mill and overlay? Is it a complete reconstruction for the roadway?
We're looking at, I believe, a complete reconstruction of the roadway.
Okay, yes. When West 70th, was it a mill and overlay when the roundabouts were installed, or was that a complete reconstruction?
That was a complete reconstruction.
Okay, and I recall, because I was new on this body at that time, and I believe that the cost of that project was assessed to the adjacent property owners?
It was the target, the easterly third of the project was split 50-50 between the Weston Galleria development and the Target development, and then the westerly 2/3 of the project was assessed 20% back to the property owners, and 80% came out of our state aid funds.
Okay, and in this instance, it's intended to be paid entirely out of tax increment financing funds?
That's correct, yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It was one of the things that confused me was that on the covering page of the memo, we indicate the potential use of Centennial Lake tax increment financing funds. But in Mr. Plowman's, the notes of Mr. Plowman's discussion with the Planning Commission, there's an indication from you that the cost is going to be split 1/3 city, 2/3 Byerly's. with respect to some of the improvements that are shown on page 2 of the minutes. I guess it's from the Transportation Commission meeting.
Yes, actually, the right-in, right-out, and the work along France Avenue is being split actually 2080, I think, on that one. So there's a split. The Hazelton Road is not anticipated to be split between the Byerly's on the cost participation sheet that we have with the Byerly's development folks.
So are you saying that over and above those cost splits, it's still going to be still going to require $1 million of TIF money from our Centennial Lakes TIF fund?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you. On page 6 of the feasibility study, there's a new cross section of the roadway with the proposed improvements showing sidewalk on each side, and then we're down to a single drive lane of 12.5 feet each direction. We've got a ADT of 7,600 per day, anticipated 9,000 per day by 2030, and I like the notion of these transportation improvements quite a bit, but I am concerned about how we manage that volume, reducing the lane capacity by 1 lane in each direction. If you could comment on that, that would be helpful for me.
Yep. The 9,000 vehicles a day is one that we really key on as far as what the capacity of that roadway is going to be in the future. This is very similar to West 70th Street in what we anticipated there with the reducing that from the 4 lanes down to the single lane in each direction. A single lane in each direction with the roundabouts can handle easily up to 12,000 vehicles a day. So we're well within the capacity of a single lane.
Okay. And then Director Teague, there were 2 revisions of conditions proposed, actually recommended by both staff and the Planning Commission. The second one dealt with the park dedication fee to be paid at the time of the certificate of occupancy rather than at the time of issuance of a building permit. Wondering why you're recommending that from a staff, that deviation from standard practice from a staff standpoint.
That is the recommendation, or that's what the applicant is requesting. The condition in within the approving resolution and staff recommendation was at the time of building permit, and for that secondary sign to be 50 square feet rather than 100.
Well, then the memo is misleading, because on page 2 I'm looking at, it says the applicant is also requesting revision of 2 conditions that are recommended by staff and the Planning Commission. And then it was that the secondary freestanding sign off Hazelton Road be 100 square feet in size, and that they be allowed to pay the park dedication fee at the time of occupancy rather than the issuance of a building permit.
That's what the applicant is recommending. I apologize if that's misleading. That's what the applicant is requesting.
It clearly says that are recommended by staff and the Planning Commission. So you're saying you're not recommending that.
Staff and the Planning Commission recommendation is for the park dedication fees to be paid at the time of building permit, and that the secondary sign be 50 square feet. And the applicant is requesting that that sign be 100 square feet, and the park dedication fees.
Oh.
It says it's the applicant's requesting a revision of to.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the clarification. Okay, that's all I've got for staff folks. Anyone else for staff?
Well, I have some questions on the original project.
Staff related.
Staff related.
All right, well, let's do that right now. Go ahead,
When
Member
do these
Swenson.
buildings get their school designation? You told me that Richfield and Edina both have some school rights over this, and they usually do it by building, not by drawing a line in the middle of a building. So how does that happen? And when does that happen?
Councilmember Swenson, I've had a chance to talk with both superintendents from the respective school districts. They've told me that there is a process they go through in the Minnesota Department of Education to address that issue jointly. I don't know what the time frame of that is, but they're both aware of it, and they both know that there is a process they need to, that they will be.
And the developer is
going
also
through.
aware. I'll let him answer him or her answer that when they get up then. And then do we have a cost of the easement cost for the pond right yet? Because that was something that was asked for by the Planning Commission, and I don't see it in this report.
We do not have an estimate for that as of yet.
Okay, we don't even have a ballpark?
We don't.
Okay. And do we have a standard promenade sign format at all for any signs that we use on the promenade that we could maybe use for this? Okay.
Not sure.
We continued the Centennial Lakes Park signage through the promenade.
Yeah, that's kind of what I remember. I meant to walk it today, but the weather wasn't really.
But it's
conducive.
not. But it's not different than the Centennial Lakes.
No, it's
That's right.
it's a continuation of those same signs.
Right, but it
The
doesn't look
easiest-
like the blue Byerly sign.
No, the easiest one for you to see would be right there at the Guitar Center crosswalk. There's a big promenade sign there.
Okay. So we do maybe have a standard that we could use for signage going into different sites, so there could be some continuity to them? Is that a tough?
Purse lip, head nod.
Into what sites?
Well,
are you
there's a
thinking
Byerly
about?
sign heading in, which I really like the fact, and I asked them to identify how to get off the promenade into the site. So I appreciate it, but one of the signs that needs a variance is their sign on the promenade that says, hey, you can go in there to get to Byerly's. Well, we
It's on
don't,
theirs.
it's on their property, but we don't allow signs to face parks, so it needs a variance. So I'm just wondering, since it's going to face a park, if we could have some continuity with our other signs, and not to be difficult, but I just think we should.
You can direct that to
Okay.
and make it so.
And that was my only comments for now. I'll wait until after the public hearing to ask the proponent other ones.
Anyone else for staff on either public hearing? Okay. One other preliminary question. Director Teague, I don't know if you can answer this or not, but just curious as to why we ended up with 4 parcels. Why the applicant determined to ask for 4 parcel designation.
It's my understanding, so each individual building would stand on its own parcel.
Okay. All right. I'm going to open this matter up for public testimony. Well, excuse me, I'm going to bring the applicant up, and if you guys want to take about 15 minutes to make your presentation.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. My name is Jim Voss. I'm with Cressa Partners. We've been the real estate advisor to Lunds and Byerly's for a number of years, and working with members of your staff for almost 3 years now on the redevelopment of this site. Our corporate address is 920 South 2nd Avenue in Minneapolis, Minnesota. You are, I think, fairly familiar with this site, and I could talk for hours about details and be guessing probably wrong at which details matter most to you. So I'd be happy to answer specific questions that you might have. Many of you, I'm sure, have read through your materials. You know there are only a few small revisions that we have made to the site plan and to the project since we were here a couple months ago with our preliminary submission. We have expanded the mezzanine on top of the building and added some lighting and features windows that will face France Avenue. We've also added some architectural features and significant landscaping to the north side of the building at your request. We've added the sign on the promenade at your request. We've done a number of things that I think improve the site. We've also had a number of meetings with neighboring property owners and are now at the point where I have emails today from both the neighboring property to the east, Mr. Wolfson, and the property to the south, Macy's, indicating that they are prepared in concept to move forward with the easements. We have some legal language to work out, but we are in agreement with both of those. And as to Hazleton, Mr. Neuendorf, your City Economic Development Coordinator, has convened a series of meetings with all the property owners as recently as May 22nd, at which all 4 property owners or their representatives indicated consent to the Hazleton Road revisions. I will tell you that those revisions are not exactly what we had in mind at first. We were advocating for a stoplight rather than a roundabout, We've come to see the wisdom of that, and more importantly, the safety that that provides to the pedestrians crossing the promenade. So at this point, I think that we are eager to receive your consent, but more eager to answer the questions that you might have. I'd like to address the two items that Mr. Teague raised and Mayor Hovland, you've asked about in terms of the revisions that we have requested. The sign first along Hazelton at the roundabout. We have, with the 4 different properties and the multiple uses, we have felt that that sign provides an important method of wayfinding into the property. If you're traveling westbound on Hazelton Road, the only access to this property is through that roundabout. And if you miss that, you need to make a left at France, come down, make a left at Gallagher, either come through Macy's or come into the right in, right out. And it's quite inconvenient. And we would like to minimize traffic who is confused or lost, making extra turns on and off of France Avenue. And so that sign, we think, provides both wayfinding and convenience, but also a matter of safety for drivers who are coming westbound on Hazelton to get into the property for both residents and for shoppers. The height of that sign was an issue when the Planning Commission considered it. We proposed the 20-foot height primarily because the roundabouts in Edina typically have a fairly large mound in the center to provide safety and visibility, and we wanted that wayfinding again to be up above the sight line as you come from the west, or come from the east heading west, to look across that mound in the roundabout and be able to see the sign. If you look at the signage plan, you'll see that the bottom portion of that sign is actually open. We've tried to ensure that people who are coming into the roundabout have a clear view to the west. And so the design of that pylon, yes, is to get the height up so that people coming from the east can see it, but also to get the height up so that people exiting have clear visibility to the west. And we hope that you will look favorably upon that larger sign request. The other issue, help me remember. Oh, the park dedication fee question. The park dedication fee we have proposed to offset by the cost of the water feature that's been proposed by the city along the east edge of our property. As the design of that continues to evolve, we candidly don't know exactly what that's going to cost. We propose to have that work done as part of the grading for our site. There's some environmental contamination that needs to be cleaned up, and that environmental straddles both the city property on the promenade and our property, and we intend to clean that up. We intend to dedicate to the city an easement for the water feature. Today we estimate that that's 7,000 to 8,000 square feet. The property was recently, a year and a half ago, appraised at $30 a square foot, so if you wanted to do some math, you could do that. We've actually proposed to dedicate it to the city at $25 a square foot, below the appraised value. But then to be reimbursed, as I say, for the actual cost of the water feature. And until that design is complete, it's difficult for us to put a cost estimate on it. Because of those uncertainties, we'll begin construction on the first building before that work is complete. And it struck us that at least for building A, it would be appropriate to defer the park dedication fee until we could accurately offset the costs that were incurred. For buildings B and C, the second and third buildings that we propose to build, we accept the request that the park dedication fee be paid at the time of the building permit application. It just struck us for building A, since we're trying to cooperate on all the cleanup and all the grading and all the work that needs to be done, that the timing of that made more sense to hold off until the time of an occupancy permit. We obviously can't lease units. We can't do anything until we have that occupancy permit. So the city has the ultimate leverage in making sure that that is done appropriately. But it was a timing question that struck us as a matter of cooperation rather than anything else. With that, I'd be happy to stand for questions. If you'd prefer to hold the public hearing first and then solicit our response to their questions or your questions after the public hearing, we're happy to do that as well.
Sure. Let me check, Mr. Voss, see if anyone has any questions for you right now. All right. One question that I have is with regard to the north elevation on the grocery store. Mm-hmm. And I still got some concerns that when you make the turn onto Hazelton Road there at France Avenue, there isn't as much life in the building on that side, and I don't want it to be a blank slate as people come up to the main entrance to your store and then turn into the right. You know, it's a variation of what we talked about before, the Whole Foods issue. I think landscaping can help a lot. You've moved the materials in and out so you don't have a single plane that we're dealing with there. And it struck me that unless I'm not seeing the plans correctly, there's no windowing on that north side. Talk to me a little bit about this so I can get comfortable or make some suggestions.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you're correct that there is not glazing on the north wall of the building. It may not be obvious, but since our last visit with you, we've added a number of architectural details to that north wall. We had, frankly, fairly limited architectural features. That's the warehouse. It's the back room or the storage room of the store. And so putting in a fair amount of windows struck us as not terribly interesting. During the day, there'll be activity, but in the evenings, there's probably not lighting going on. So there's no light shining out. During the day, there'll be dark glass. So that facing into the warehouse didn't do a lot for us. And even a little bit of daylighting into the warehouse. We're looking at racking and some things there. So it didn't strike us that was interesting. So instead, we added some architectural detail to that wall. We have also substantially increased the number of proposed plantings on that wall. And as you make the turn from southbound France to eastbound Hazleton, there will be a bit of a slope there. So again, our intent was to create some planting materials with different textures and different heights that gave a natural relief to that wall as opposed to glazing high up that wouldn't be lit at night and wouldn't be really terribly visible during the day. We were trying to be responsive with something that, Edina residents would experience and see rather than just glazing.
Yeah, I think I'm a poor communicator on this windows notion, and believe me, I understand completely what you mean about why would people be interested in looking into the to the back of the store where it's basically inventory and warehouse. I concur. I was thinking in my mind some clerestory windows that would be up above. They didn't necessarily have to be windows that or anything other than opaque, or you didn't have to be able to see through them in my mind. Or I think about those panels that are in the north wall of the Super Target, where they've used them actually for advertising, and I'll call them windows, but they're kind of display cases in a way.
I think the city has standards about how much advertising we can have in signage.
Yeah, well, and I do like on the corner of Hazelden Road in France, you've got that elevation with the windowing up above, and that's a nice feature. And then you can see a ribbon of glass as you get to the east, kind of just west of of the signage. It just struck me that as nice as the materials are that are proposed to be used, that I didn't want that to become this blank wall. And I know that landscaping will help. And it's just a concern that I have. It's a worry that I have, that both for you and for the city as well, because we want that to be, as people make the turn either northbound to eastbound or southbound to eastbound, it's an appealing entrance to your project if this is approved.
I appreciate your concern, and frankly, your staff has been pretty helpful in sensitizing us to some of the concerns that both City Council and Planning Commission might have. And if further review of that northerly face of the building is something you'd like to have us study further, if you'll refer that to staff subsequent to your final approval, I'd be happy to work with Carrie and Wayne and to talk a little bit further about what we could do for materials along that north wall. It is a matter of practicality, and I don't want to mislead you in terms of how that would both illuminate the street at night or invite folks into the store. That's not the part of the store that folks are excited to see.
I concur. It just seems to me that something's not quite right there, but maybe I'm wrong.
Happy to work with the staff on that.
But I think that maybe is what we did with Whole Foods. We said work with staff after the fact, and if this ends up being approved, maybe that's a good course of action. Member Bennett, you had a comment?
I have some questions. Mr. Vose, you've described some changes that were made to the design. However, I didn't hear this in the Planning Commission presentation and haven't heard it tonight. Looking at the compliance table, it looks like there were some other changes made as well. It looks like your side street setback from the store from Hazleton has been reduced by 2 feet, fairly de minimis, but you were at 24 feet. Now you've got a 20, you're requesting, I'm sorry, that may actually be greater. You may be up 2 feet on that. However, No, it is the other direction. It was 26, it's now down to 24, so you're 2 feet closer than you were before. The required would be 50 feet. Also, Building A, that proximity to the promenade that we talked about when you were here last time, you were requesting a 27-foot setback. 81 feet would have been required by code, and it now appears that you have increased the amount of your request for variance to 11 feet and 22 feet in the compliance table. So you, in other words, your 81-foot tall building will be located 11 feet and 22 feet from the promenade.
With your permission, and Jennifer, with your assistance, could I move to Carrie's slides and point to some of the site plan details?
Sure, and then just continuing, it looks like there were a few other variances that have increased as well. The Building C, the side street, I'm sorry, that's the same, but the rear east, you were not requesting a setback before, and now 79 feet would be required. Now you're requesting a variance to 46 feet.
I'm sorry, you lost me on that. Tell me again.
Okay, so in other words, you've added a variance request.
Yes.
There's a set. Previously, Building C, there was one variance being requested from the side street from Hazelden Road. 79 feet setback required. You were requesting to be allowed to build 43 feet from the roadway. Now you have added another variance request. Building C, the rear or from the east, again a 79-foot setback required. Now, previously you were proposing 200 plus feet. Now you are again requesting a variance to 46 feet. So two variances, setback variances for Building C, one building setback from Hazelton Road for the Byerlys. Again, de minimis change in that, but a change. And fairly substantial change, I would say, for Building A from the promenade. Again, required 81 feet, previously showing 27 feet, and now requesting 11 and 22 feet. Also, the maximum floor area ratio, 50% is the city standard. You were originally requesting, or at your last visit here, 72%. Now you're up to 80%. Also, your parking, 357 spaces required. You were requesting a variance to 314 spaces at your last visit, and now you've got that reduced to 307 spaces.
Let me do my best to respond to each of those, and I may have to rely on my team. I'm grateful to the team that's been involved in the design. The folks at Pope Architects have been terrific. Schaefer Richardson's been a terrific housing partner for us, and Anderson Companies, who you know here in Edina, has been extraordinary. The setback difference on the north side, as I mentioned that we'd added some architectural details, that retaining wall, we've added some pilasters to give that some relief, and so to allow for some movement in that wall and respect your request to do some things on the north side, the setback is diminished in part because of some of the articulation to that wall, and particularly along the retaining wall, which today you might see in this area. There's indication of trash, there's monument sign. We'll actually have a pad here for a transformer. And so the details that have revised this wall, I think, are the resulting request for the setback there. The variation on the promenade, I'm sorry that I don't recall the difference. This building has not moved, and that property line has not moved in any of our drawings, so I'm not aware that we've revised the promenade setback, but if the chart indicates that, I'd have to sit with Mr. Teague and identify exactly which revisions are indicated there. The narrowest distance is from this corner of the pool right down to the property line, and we exceed the setback on the north end. We are requesting a variance on the south end of the building, and that distance has not changed since the last time we were here. So I apologize if I don't dispute your analysis, but I'm not sure what variations are there.
It's not my analysis, I'm just reading. It's
accept.
just the compliance table.
I apologize.
And it was
I don't mean to dispute
27
that
feet.
chart.
It was 27 feet in the previous staff report. It's 11 feet and 22 feet. What you probably just showed is 11 feet. But the 27 again was what was shown before or stated before, and that has been reduced to 11 feet and 22 feet.
I believe the 27 feet is the edge of the building, and the 11 feet is the edge of the parking ramp, and so there's a difference of height. And but I apologize for having confused you.
And again, I want to
point.
be clear, it's not that you are proposing to be farther from the promenade, you're actually proposing to be closer, so that instead of that 81 feet of required setback, you're requesting to be set back only 11 and 22 feet.
Councilmember Bennett, if I could respond to those. On the previous request, preliminary plan, Mr. Voss is right, those buildings adjacent to the promenade haven't moved. The measurement at preliminary plan was taken from the tan shaded area, that's the 27-foot setback, and I didn't take into account that garage setback at 11 feet. So that's why the table is different in that project. And the building C setback that's indicated at 46 feet, the only reason that a setback is required in that location is because of the change of zoning. As the properties exist today, they're both zoned PCD3. Mm-hmm. So we measure the required setback at the perimeter of that entire district. So we wouldn't even require a setback if it weren't for the zoning changing. We measure the a rear yard setback, or side in this case, from the perimeter of that zoning district. So it's because we're changing zoning districts, we now require a setback there. If this project were PCD3, no setback would be even required there. And so that wasn't indicated on the chart at the time of preliminary plan.
So you're saying that staff changed it and didn't explain it to the Planning Commission and didn't explain it this evening?
It was, I believe it was explained that it was missed on the chart the first time through.
Okay. My chief concern is the setback from the promenade. It's the setback from the park. And the information that we've been given is that because height is set by the height of the building, because the amount of the setback is set by the height of the building, that an 81-foot setback would be required. And at our previous consideration of this, we were presented with a 27-foot setback, and now we're being presented with the table that, and I understand that there's a garage that's closer, and I guess it would have been probably, I don't know how it would have influenced the discussion the previous time, but at least it would have been clearer to us that it's a 70-foot variance that's being requested from one of those measurements. Thank you.
Right. And just to clarify, too, these aren't variances. It's part of the PUD that they're negotiating. They're variations from the code, but not. But we're not approving a variance. It's a PUD ordinance to establish these setbacks.
Thank you for the clarification.
If I may, Councilmember Bennett and members of the council, you had two other areas that you identified as variations, and I want to address each of those. First, the FAR, the floor area ratio. Because of the mezzanine area I mentioned earlier that we have enlarged on the store, we previously had a very, very small mezzanine. We've now offered a larger mezzanine. It'll put some glazing toward France. It'll give the building a little bit more interest on that side. And it frankly functions well for Byerly's to have some of the back office space upstairs so that we can have more customer space on the main floor. The enlargement of that mezzanine changes the FAR. And so yes, the FAR increases because of the mezzanine. I want to be clear about that. Last item is a decrease in parking. What you'll notice along this edge of the property, when we were here last, we had moved the property, or the road, entirely onto the Byerly's property. And through some cordial cooperation with Mr. Wolfson to the east, we've been able to relocate the property a little bit to the east. We've shifted it approximately 6 feet. We've added a tree-lined boulevard here, and we've taken away the parking stalls that existed along that street. And we've also revised some of the parking area, the access to these parking lots. And so we've lost a couple stalls here and a few along the road. But we think that that's actually enhanced both the pedestrian experience, the landscaping of the site, and the safety of vehicle movement through the parcel. We have, in fact, lost a few parking stalls. So thank you for pointing that out. Other questions?
Other questions for Mr. Voss? All right. Let me ask. We're at, if my notes are correct here, we're at 24 units per acre?
That's correct.
Is that where we are? Okay. And there's a density table on page 6 of the
yes.
memorandum, and
yes.
Seems that even with these corrections, if you will, that you're still less dense than many of the buildings that are in the neighborhood. Is that correct?
We believe that to be the case. The 6-story height really seems to fit the area. It's well within the long-range plan for this promenade area. We were invited previously to think about 8 or 10 stories in height, and it struck us that 6 was a little bit more appropriate, both from the market perspective as well as the height of surrounding buildings.
One issue that Member Bennett did raise that I think requires a little bit of thought is the fact that we had discussed before on a preliminary basis the Building A rear east promenade setback, the city standard at 81 feet under PCD 3, and we had agreed to go to 27 feet. My thinking was that was off the corner of the garage, and so apparently it was taken from the beige area to get that 27-foot measurement. Maybe that wasn't even right, because now you've got 22 feet and 11 feet. So that is something to think about a little bit here. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Foss? Member Sprague.
Thank you. After the preliminary approval, one of the conditions was to make a good faith attempt to reach a 10%, to exceed the state energy code guidelines by 10% or 10% energy savings, however we're going to phrase that. What additional strategies have you considered with that new direction?
Appreciate your inquiry on that, and we candidly expected the Planning Commission to test us on that, and we didn't have the opportunity. The Energy Design Assistance Program, which is a program sponsored by Xcel Energy, has now admitted both the housing project and the store to their review exercise. You present your plan, you do a follow-up 60 days or so later, and then you do another meeting, and there's essentially 3 meetings to that. We've had the first meeting for both. We've not had the second meeting, but in that second and then third meeting, we will receive their recommendations to, at a minimum, exceed or be below the energy standards by 5%, and we've asked them to help us get to 10%.
So they're aware of the stretch goal?
Absolutely.
Okay.
What struck us as your request, not specifically just 10% energy reduction, but sustainability. The PUD language that's in the city ordinance invites the developers to do things that are sustainable, that are extraordinary in terms of reducing the impact of the environment. And we looked at energy consumption, and electrical consumption is only one element. I think we talked previously about the reduced fuel consumption of shoppers who can walk to the store versus drive. We estimate a reduction of 100,000 driving miles per year from 250 residents that can walk twice a week to a grocery store versus drive an average of 4 miles round trip. We think that's significant. We've also dug a little bit deeper, and maybe that's a bad pun, but looking into how we can do some stormwater retention on site and keep as much of the stormwater as possible on site and really, really reduce the amount of stormwater that ends up in the 9 Mile Creek Watershed District. Through some pretty interesting and fairly new features, particularly around the housing, we're able to retain almost all the stormwater on site, and we've been able to create capacity well beyond the demand of this parcel. So if there are other parcels that are upstream from us in the Watershed District, we might be able to offset other folks' stormwater as well. So beyond just electrical consumption, we've been trying to do even more, recognizing that 10% might be tough, but there might be more that we can do.
Thank you.
All right. All right, let's open this matter up for a public hearing and invite anyone interested to come forward. You'll have, as Ms. Benarott said at the beginning of the meeting, you'll have 3 minutes. You can use one of the side podiums. If you have anything you want us to see, you can use the center table, and we'll provide a handheld microphone, and you'll see a cautionary light, a yellow light, come on when you've got 30 seconds left, and we welcome anyone to come forward that wishes to testify.
My name is Lori Groats, and I live at 5513 Park Place. I hadn't intended to make any comments tonight, but after listening to the discussion, I have comments on 3 items. First of all, I think requesting $1 million from the TIF district is too much, and I do think that there should be some cost sharing with Byerly's on that. The second is, I'm wondering, is there going to be enough setback from the north side of the Byerly building and the north side of their apartment building from Hazelton? Is there going to be enough setback there so that sunshine can get in there and ice will not develop on Hazelton Road? Now in Richfield, they've done some redeveloping in the last few years, and they also on 65th and Lindale, they have a strip shopping center there that's been developed, and they have, I think it's an LA Fitness that butts up pretty close to 65th Street on the north. The same on 76th Street in Lindale, where they have some senior living, comes up close to the street. They have had to put up signs that say beware of icy roads in the winter. They've got signs posted, beware of icy roads. The sun can't get past the buildings and get down to the street because the buildings are so close to the street that the streets are icing up. So take a look at the setbacks, make sure that you can get enough sunlight in there. I know the the store, if I remember properly, it sits up quite high, even though the store itself might only be a couple of stories. The apartment building that's going to be closer on the promenade on the north, that's going to be taller. I don't know if there will be enough sunshine. I don't want to create a safety hazard in there. And the last comment, Mayor, you had made a comment, why would they want 4 separate property IDs on that location? This is my opinion in the future if they want to sell off the other 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Hovland, members of the City Council, my name is Peter Beck, and I'm here this evening on behalf of the Rue de France building. Would it be possible to pull up the first slide from Carrie's presentation? It was sort of a perspective drawing of from the south. It was more of a overhead. All the way at the beginning. Keep going. There. Yes.
Have you got what you want, Mr. Beck?
Yes, I do, and I'll reference it in a second. So the Rue de France building is owned by...
Can you give us your business address too?
I'm sorry, 800 Nicollet Mall.
Thank you.
In Minneapolis. Is owned by Sun Life Assurance Company and managed by a local company, Northmark Real Estate Service. And with me tonight is Kurt Stenson, the property manager. And as the staff has mentioned, Kurt has been meeting with city staff for some time regarding this project, and mostly in relationship to the changes to Hazelton Road. However, the legal notices with respect to the rezonings and so on have been going to the wrong address. It's an address, a property that Northmark also manages, but they don't have an office in there, so they haven't been obtained. And I'm not making that point as to fault staff. I'm not sure how that happened, but I'm just raising the point to point out that we realize we are coming very late in the game. That's the reason. The out-of-state property owner wasn't aware of some of the details here. Having said that, I know Mr. Teague mentioned in his presentation that the Rue de France property has some objections to the project, and that's too strong a word. What I would say is the owners of this property have some concerns. They are significant concerns to them, and we have some ideas about how to address them. We had a very productive meeting with city staff yesterday, and I just wanted to update the council on that and to ask for council concurrence in some of these ideas we have for addressing the concerns. We do know there's a long history here, and we know that this project is going to move ahead. The building is going to be located at the corner of France and Hazelton. However, that location does have some significant impacts on Rue de France. I asked for this slide so that you can see the concern. The concern is that this building will all but obliterate the views of the Rue de France building to northbound traffic on France Avenue. The Rue de France building is a multi-tenant retail building. Most of the tenants are not destination retailers. They are the type of tenants that rely on drive-by business. Losing visibility for, this you can see a little bit from this drawing. I went out over the weekend and drove it, and it's quite dramatic. You know, at this time, there's a very long view of the Rue de France building as you're headed northbound over the now parking lots for Byerly's, and once the building is in there, you will not be able to see the Rue de France building really until you're at the intersection. And the problem is, at that point, people are going to be too close to safely move into the right turn lane and make a right turn so they can get into the building. And that's the concern. And that will have an impact on the tenants and will have an impact on the building, and we think will be a negative also for the city if the building starts to decline. So, recognizing that the city desires the building to be there and has in fact asked the developer to put it there, we acknowledge it'll be there. And we'd prefer that the northerly setback, the 50-foot normally required was respected. But even with that, there's still a significant impact. So we thought about if that's a given, what can we do to mitigate that impact? And a couple of the thoughts we've had, and we talked to staff, and again, I think, staff can speak for themselves, but it seemed to us that they were positively received, these ideas. One is a larger sign for the Rue de France building at that corner. There is a sign there now, but again, a larger sign that could be seen from further to the north, and hopefully could be seen at a point where drivers would still have the opportunity to see the sign, identify a business that they may want to go to, get into the right lane and make the right turn so that they can come in off of Hazleton. And it's particularly important for this building because unlike the Byerly's property, they're asking for a larger sign because it would be inconvenient if people miss the turn. They'll have to go around the block and come back. People miss, a majority of the people that miss this turn, they won't go around the block, they'll just be gone, and there'll be a lost opportunity. The second thought, and probably a much better solution and much more desirable from not just our perspective, but perhaps the city's, is to work with the adjoining property owner to the north to achieve a right-in, right-out. There is an existing right-in, right-out there to achieve the opportunity to access that to make a movement into the Rue de France building. That would enable a driver, a potential customer, to get onto the property once they've seen the building, which would be huge. It would also has the potential for taking a lot of trucks off of Hazleton and out of the roundabout because that access would lead very conveniently into the back of the building where the truck docks are. So, those were our two main thoughts for how to address the impacts related to the siting of the building. We also, as I mentioned earlier, are concerned about that. We share the mayor's concern about the north facade of the Byerly's building. Essentially, the Rue de France building will now be looking at the loading docks for Byerly's, and they have put a lot of effort into screening. Again, we would prefer that it not be that way, but we recognize that it will. So I would characterize it as a concern. Finally, the roundabout to the east is a concern, and for a couple of reasons. It appears that inevitably the Rue de France property will lose some parking. The question is how much. It could be just a space or two at the east entrance, but it could also be by the time you make that roundabout work for trucks that you lose more parking up there. And every parking space lost, it's not a matter of whether the property will still conform to either city requirements or to current parking needs. Every space that's lost impacts the value of the building because it reduces the opportunities in the future if there's a different mix of tenants. Because you will have to, park, and again, not just to meet city code, but to meet the needs of those tenants.
Okay.
So those, and that becomes less of an issue. The
Mr.
cul-de-sac.
Beck, I let you drift over quite a ways
Okay,
here.
I'm sorry.
On your time. So I think we understand the three key issues that you've raised.
Okay, and I do want to say that we're not here with objections. We're not here to oppose this project. We're here to ask for some consensus from the council and direction to staff to continue to work with us on some of these solutions that we have come up with in the last couple of days, and there might be others.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Beck.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to testify?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
We had a motion and a second to close the public hearing. This public hearing encompassed both of these matters, 4B and 4C. You want to close both of them?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you for asking.
And the seconder wants to close both of them as well?
I accept that.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor of closing the public hearing relating both to 4B and 4C, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. Questions for staff? Further questions?
You had some questions raised just now.
Mm-hmm. And Member Bennett, you had some from
For Director
another document.
Houle, I note that the county letter supporting write-in, write-out design, there's a highlighted paragraph that says that the county is in support of the proposed write-in, write-out access with the inclusion of the following comments, and then not highlighted or circled. The paragraph below states, from the initial discussions, we have supported a site plan and traffic circulation system that incorporated the adjacent Macy's home store. We feel that patrons to the various commercial establishments will need alternative routes to access France Avenue, thus avoiding a concentrated burden on any one access point. The current site shows this internal connection. My question is, what has been accomplished in this process or will be accomplished to guarantee that that access remains, because that does appear, while not stated as a condition of this approval, it does appear to clearly be a basis on which Hennepin County is stating support for the write-in, write-out.
Yep. Councilmember Bennett, maybe we could have Mr. Voss come up and talk about their agreement with Macy's, because they do have a cross easement agreement with Macy's, and I'm not quite sure how that works as far as recording that to the properties.
Plan. There we are. So we'll jump to, there it is. That'll be close enough. What we've worked out, the query about write-in, write-out is an interesting one, both for Rue de France to the north, since U.S. Bank already has that, but in the long block between Hazleton and Gallagher, our agreement with Macy's is to provide this write-in, write-out to give access to all of the residents who are here, the shoppers to both the Byerly store and to the strip retail that we envision, and to the shoppers to the Macy's site. What we've arranged with Macy's is not only shared access over this roadway here, but also allowing patrons of the 71 France development to exit to the south across the front of the Macy's store and to use what is today the Gallagher Road stoplight, but also to let patrons of the Macy's property exit through this route up onto Hazleton Road. And again, trying to reduce some of that traffic on France that happens between Hazleton and Gallagher. Macy's has been, I want to say really cooperative, but really cooperative for Macy's means it takes about 3 years to get an easement document done. But they have been very supportive. They've worked with us on site design and site layout. They are advocates for the alignment of the roadway that you see in the access through their parcel, and are participating with us in the design of the France Avenue frontage and the placement of the retaining walls and such. So that's been, if you don't mind their pace, a fairly cooperative conversation.
Thank you.
Member Sprague and Member Swenson.
I want to go to the question from the Rue de France representative. Director Houle, one of the solutions was a write-in, write-out. What's the city's role in that's being requested in that notion?
Yes, when we met with the Rue de France folks yesterday, they talked about the right-in, right-out. Right now, there's actually a right-in, right-out that U.S. Bank has, and there's a possibility of either potentially talking to U.S. Bank into moving that to the south, or actually accessing that driveway circulatory road that they have going on the south side of their property. But I volunteered to help facilitate those discussions between U.S. Bank and the county if need be to do that. We still have to figure out funding and all those other aspects that go along with it, but I think it's a good possibility, and it would be a good design to improve or add circulation ability, between all the retail establishments and office buildings. So,
when you say figure out funding, what do you mean?
Obviously, there would be a cost to have the Rue de France access that circulatory road, or to move that over. So we don't have that cost built into any of our projects that we're doing right now. So it would either have to be sustained by the two properties, or the city, or somebody would have to obviously come up with the funding portion of that.
But the normal practice would be to specially assess that, would it not?
It could be to specially assess it. I'd have to check with our city attorney now we're starting to get more onto the private property aspect of it.
That's why I asked the question.
The other question is, we don't normally pay for it. Usually the property owners pay for that.
In a lot of cases they do. When we've done projects, let's say the 70th Street roundabout project, we actually combine the Brandon Square and the U.S. Bank access drives into one driveway. So anytime that we can reduce access points off of a roadway, like we're doing on Hazelton Road, to put them into one driveway, I think that's for the better of the traveling public. On France Avenue, it would probably be a good idea to at least look at it and have that discussion to see if U.S. Bank is even willing to look at giving Rue de France access to that drive, or moving it over. We haven't fleshed that out. That was the first that we've had. That request that came in yesterday.
So at this point, there's no action being requested of us, other than...
No, right now there's no action part of either one of these projects. As we talk about the easements, I think that's where it's going to be coming out. Now, that's where we can kind of flesh out what the costs could be, and with the U.S. Bank. I do have the attention of the U.S. Bank folks when we acquired the easement, so I have the right connections to ask those questions right now.
So it's just looking at feasibility at this point?
Yes.
Okay. Mayor?
Okay.
We can go through some of these other questions too.
This is a question that was asked as to how far away is Byerly's from the street as far as shade and winter and icy roads. And what I see is 24.9 inches to the sidewalk, and then a 5-foot sidewalk and a 5-foot boulevard at the corner where Byerly's is the closest. So that would give us 35 feet approximately.
That's on the store. I think she was also concerned about building C.
Right, and buildings, C is 43.7 feet plus more boulevard, more sidewalk, and more extra space. So can you tell me, do you know anything about the winter sunline, and how that will affect that roadway? Yeah, no, I was asking either
the architects
or our road consultants.
From a design perspective, we've not been asked to do sunlight studies on that, so I would be out of school to comment on the shadowing. Currently, your maintenance of those streets keeps them pretty clear, and because of the volume of traffic that's on Hazelton, I know that it gets a fair amount of attention from the city, but I can't tell you what the shading impact would be. I think it's worth noting on building C, the housing building, it's got some height, but because of the movement of the sun, that probably is going to have some sweep of daylight. The store may have a larger impact, but again, the height of that is reduced. The parapet on that is about 21 feet on the north wall, except for the pop-ups, 21, 22 feet. And so the setback actually exceeds the height of the building.
Exceeds the height of the building, okay.
So, Director Houle, do you
Yep.
see any maintenance issues on something like the Weston on the street itself, where you have a higher?
Right. I don't want to disc our adjoining communities, but for a good example of our maintenance ability is that when you look at 50th and France is when 5,000 France went in, it increased the height, and that's actually closer to the roadway than this would be, and we have no issue down there as far as maintaining the roadway. So I believe our public works folks do an excellent job of keeping the roadways ice-free, and they would have no issue on Hazelton Road.
Thank you.
One of the other issues I thought needed clarification that Ms. Gross raised was the cost allocations between the city and Byerly's or Lund's Food Holdings. So they are going to pay for some of the work, and do we have any estimate as to what the cost allocations will be there? What's the contribution?
Yep, I wonder if
to those roadway improvements?
Maybe if Bill or maybe Mr. Ross is grabbing the microphone, so.
You were looking at me, I wasn't sure, and Bill Neuendorf is sitting right behind me. Bill and I have had a number of conversations about the allocation of costs. Could we pop back to the site plan again, please, Ms. Penrod? And thanks for your help on these. The work that's along Hazelton Road that's been proposed is, as was referenced by staff earlier, approximately $1 million that would be paid out of the TIF. The work along France Avenue, because there was a proposal to redo France, but we're proposing to also redo France, we've arranged an allocation of costs that's slightly different for the retaining wall versus the pavement on the right in, right out. So we've got a series of line items. I think there's about a dozen different line items. And the range is 1/3, 2/3 to 20%, 80%, depending on the line item. And so I think the city's total exposure for all of those costs, for all of the access points and everything that's shared, is in the range of $500,000. And the developer's costs, for all the pavement, is about twice that. It's on balance 1/3, 2/3, and we bear the lion's share of that. But because the sidewalk would have been coming through with or without our project, an allocation of that's appropriate because we'd like it closer to the store and we think it's safer to have it back away from the street. But because there's two retaining walls instead of just one, again, a slightly different allocation there makes sense. Moving France Avenue and widening the boulevard, narrowing the street, you would have moved the curb and the gutter. So we thought you should still pay for the new curb and gutter. But the landscaping that goes along that, we've agreed to pick up pieces. So unless you'd really like to get into the line items, I think it's 2/3, 1/3 is a fair way to look at it. But Bill, if you'd like to describe it differently, please do.
Jim, that's a pretty good summary. I'm Bill Neuendorf, the Economic Development Manager. And for the last couple months, as this project has evolved, just as Mr. Voss mentioned, staff has realized that there's some work that the city was planning on doing, and Byerly's was also planning on doing some very similar work. So we decided to work together cooperatively and not have the city build a curb in this location on Monday, only to have Byerly's rip it out on Friday and move it 3 feet over. So part of the final redevelopment agreement for this project would include final detail on this cost-sharing matrix. And as Mr. Voss mentioned, there's a variety of different works from sidewalks to landscaping to some soil movement for the new water features on the promenade. At this point, we don't have final project costs for each of those line items, but after the project's approved this evening, presuming that would happen, the staff will get the final numbers and work together so that the final development agreement will have certainty regarding who is responsible for the work and then who is responsible for which portions of the payments.
Thank you. Mr. Rickert, one of the concerns raised by Mr. Beck on behalf of his client was that the roundabout to the east may cause a loss of parking for Rue de France, and in your presentation there was some potential loss of parking spaces at the Guitar Center, but you said nothing at Rue de France.
That is correct.
Are you comfortable with that representation?
Yes. Our analysis and our design of this roundabout accommodates a WD-50 truck going in and out, and with that accommodation, there's 8 total spots that are lost, primarily all on the Guitar Center site. None on the Rue de France site.
Okay, thank you. And Director Teague, one of the other issues Mr. Beck raised that he'd like to have the city consider was whether there might be a willingness to allow to have us give them a variance to have a larger sign for the Rue de France building to better identify the building to northbound France traffic.
Yeah, we did have that discussion,
discussion.
and we went through the process. They would have to go before the Planning Commission for a variance to be considered. I had indicated they could make a case for the building blocking views, and we talked a little bit about should the council allow that 100-square-foot sign on Hazelden. Well, it wouldn't set a specific precedent for that site, but it potentially could help them in obtaining a little bit larger sign for their site as well.
Okay. And with respect to the meetings that have taken place over a number of months, has the owner's rep, Northmark, been participating in some of those meetings?
They have been.
Which meetings have they been participating in?
The meetings that Wayne and Bill had been having in regard to Hazelden Road go back to last fall. When I heard the concern yesterday about them not receiving notice, I went back and took a look at the tax records and the mailing list that goes out. And there was an address, that previous address that was sent out was changed at the county on May 29th. So that was previous to when the notification went out. So we used the most accurate information that we had going off the county records. Again, it was changed May 29th. Mailings had gone out well before that date.
Had Northmark been included in any conversations that the city had, either through Mr. Neundorf or your office, prior to preliminary plan approval?
Yes, in regard to the roadway.
Trying to get a handle on how long the representative for the owners knew about the notion that this building might be sited in that northwest corner of the Byerly site.
Well, there is a sign on the land that says it's proposed for, I mean, there's a huge, my view is it's a huge sign. Maybe it's not 20 feet tall by 12 feet wide, but.
Mr. Neuendorf can probably answer that question better than anybody, though.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I went back and checked our records. Our first sit-down face-to-face meeting with each of the 4 property owners along Hazelton was on January 4th of this year. We then had a follow-up meeting on February 11th, and then finally one on May 10th. And at each of those meetings, we looked at the recent updates to the Byerly's plans, because it was in flux during that time, and then also the improvements on Hazelton Road were also in flux. So at each of those meetings, the design evolved to address as many of the concerns of the property owners as we could. And at this point, the Hazelton Road improvements are still conceptual, lots of details to figure out, but we've had several meetings with the owners.
Yeah, thank you. What was their preliminary approval date? Somebody have that?
Yeah, I do.
And while you're getting the preliminary approval date, can I get the
March 19th.
The visual of the pond and the path from the promenade? Somebody had a picture of it.
Carrie has a concept drawing.
Carrie, do you have a concept drawing of that? Because that's the only correct drawing, right? We currently have, because we don't have that in our packet. Because, yeah, it's not that one.
Was it on the site plan?
No. There it is. Where the path goes on the other side of it, correct?
Dated 5/21/13.
5/21/13, okay. And-
We've got that.
Is that 21 or 29, Carrie?
5/29.
Okay.
So to be clear on this, that pond that is part of the design work of our current designer who did the rest of the promenade sits partially on Byerly's property, correct?
That is correct, yes. Yep.
And so there is an easement cost to having it sit there, correct?
That's what we've been working out with the cost agreement.
Okay, but it's our pond, so it's our job to build it or to designate the builder, but the costs, we will know ahead of time of what it costs to build it, correct?
That is correct, yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So are we going to pay for the cost of building it, or is Lund's going to pay for it?
It'll be, the cost to construct it will come out of the cost share, and part of that comes out of the park dedication fees. That'll be to construct this fourth phase of the promenade, essentially what we're looking at here. And then we also there's potential for some use of stormwater fees, because this is almost a three-dimensional project going on here. Because we have what you see on the screen here is the aesthetic water feature that's going to be a lined pond, and we're taking the roof water off the Byerly's development, putting it into the pond, and hopefully some water off of the Wolfson property if they redevelop that in the future, and bring it through the ponds, and then the overflow water would go into an infiltration system that's going to be below the ponds, and that's where part of the agreement or on the consent agenda tonight was to do a study with 9 Mile Watershed District to study that infiltration aspect of it. So we're starting that study with Bar Engineering to see how much we can actually infiltrate underneath all of this park feature, essentially. So there might be some stormwater funds going into that aspect of it. There might be some TIF funds going into the park project, and then park dedication fees, I believe, also.
Let me finish. So really, what you're proposing, similar to how we took the Waters Park dedication fee for the building on the Crosstown and Tracy and used it to rebuild the park that it overlooks, you're suggesting that we take the park dedication fees and use it to offset the cost of building this pond?
I believe that's what we're looking at. Is that correct? Mr. Neuendorf, right? Yep, okay. Yep.
All right.
I'm sorry, no, Member Bennett.
Member Bennett.
Just a follow-up question, thank you. Director Houle, did I just hear you say that this pond will possibly be managing some water from the Byerly site as well as from the Sichuan Star site?
Yes, what we're asking for is, as one of the previous conditions was to take the roof water off the residential buildings and pipe that in towards the pond itself, so that we can take that water and infiltrate it, use it for the water feature, along with the lift station that we're half constructed with the third phase of the promenade, to bring that water into the water feature itself. But then the overflow, because we can't control when we have big rain events, that overflow then would flow into an underground system that would infiltrate. And we're working with the watershed to see what our infiltration rates are, and so that we can also look to the future. Our hope is that we can bank some of those credits of infiltrating that water underground, so that we can apply that to other projects within the watershed. So, for instance, if we're looking at rebuilding a park shelter building somewhere within 9 Mile, is that we could take those credits, so then we don't have to spend money on a stormwater project to rebuild that park shelter or some other public type building itself. So we're kind of looking to the future to say, well, how can we set ourselves up so we don't have to do all this other stormwater work like we're doing, like at the Gulf Dome or Countryside Park and some of those other areas.
So it sounds from your answer as though there is some broader public benefit, but it also sounds from the first part of your answer that there's also a private benefit to this, or a benefit to private property, in that there will be some management of their stormwater, and that would be in addition to the aesthetic benefit offered by that as a view for the residents, and I believe that was something that was pointed out during the Planning Commission discussion. So if I'm correct again, there is the broader public benefit, but there also is the benefit to the project itself.
There is, and I understand that the residential, along with the Byerly site, is actually, if we didn't take the water, that they would actually take care of the water themselves with this project itself. So they're not reducing down their infiltration or their water quality aspect of their projects. So we're kind of doubling up a little bit as far as the water, treating the water that's coming off their sites.
However that's done, it just doesn't sound like it doesn't sound exactly the same as Countryside Park, which is something with, pure public access and benefit. So that park dedication fees, you're taking and applying them, you're using what becomes city money for a city facility. In this instance, it sounds like something would be paid for possibly with park dedication fees, but that would have both that private benefit and the broader public benefit. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions just about signage. But I guess before I ask that, Wayne, regarding the shared access with US Bank on the north end, if that were to, I have it up here on Google Earth, but I don't, it's kind of fuzzy. US Bank currently has right in, right out from France Avenue?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
So it wouldn't take much other than some permission and a little bit of work to make that open to Rue de France?
That's correct. If we just access from Rue de France, similar to what Macy's and Byerly's are doing, that wouldn't take much work. Now, if we were to move that right in, right out to the south, then that would take additional work and more landscaping and things like that in that area.
So just kind of just making access toward the Rue de France side, how is that going to work with the least amount of work and the least amount of expense, but also allowing their trucks to get into the back of their building? I'm just wondering, how big a project is this going to be? Is it going to end up being easier to move that entrance anyway, or can it just be opened up a little bit?
That's what we need to analyze that. We need to analyze the circulation and the truck turning movements and actually just find out how the trucks actually access the Rue de France. Because if you drive behind Rue de France, they have loading docks going in both directions right now, and actually one actual loading dock facing to the west on the west side of the building. The other ones are just doorways that face east and west. So, so we need to sit down with them and find out what the traffic patterns are for the trucks that are loading and unloading there.
My initial reaction to that was that I was concerned about adding access on France Avenue to yet another spot, but it's already there, so
it's already there.
It's less of a concern. Regarding signage on the Byerly's site, the tall 20-foot sign has me a little concerned, because if I'm in a car, I'm going to see the building and I'm going to see the signage on the building, and that probably is enough for me. And so the sign on the pylons, that I can see through the pylons, but the sign is up here. If I'm in my car, I'm not even going to see that sign. So I guess I'm wondering what the wisdom is in having a sign that high, that I am close enough to it that I don't even see the sign.
There's a question about the height of the middle of the roundabout. So can you answer somebody the height of the middle of the roundabout?
Maybe Andy can talk a little bit about sight lines.
Because that's a sight line that's under issue, is when you're coming from Target and you need to go around the roundabout, but you have to turn in right then because you can't take a left turn into Byerly's later on. You have to go in at the roundabout area. So the question is, can you see the sign over the roundabout?
Maybe if you could maybe back up, Andy, a little bit and talk about sight lines and roundabouts, because that's been a question that we've received on the 70th Street roundabouts, is why can't we just clear out all the landscaping so we can see down the road, see people that are passing us and things like that. And it's specifically designed in such a way for safety, essentially. So maybe Andy can talk a little bit about sight lines.
So roundabout design in general, and it's kind of counterintuitive because usually you want to be able to see farther. But what ends up happening at a roundabout, given what your eye needs to see, is what is the vehicle coming from the circulatory lane on my left. In addition to that, you also have to slow down before you get to the roundabout. So one of the things is when you're seeing through, you don't want to be able to see the road ahead of you. So that's why, in general, they're at least mounted up to 3.5 feet, which is the height of eye in a normal
You have a pedestrian crossing as well that you have to adhere to.
Right, exactly. So what you're trying to do is kind of zone in, your sight to where you have to be, and you don't want to look beyond. So that's why, in general, they're always, they should be mounted up at least 3.5 feet, sometimes more, often they shouldn't be less than that. So and it's done either with berming or,
landscape treatments and that sort of thing, trees sometimes.
So as you're approaching a roundabout, on a single lane roundabout, you want to be able to see the crosswalk first, because you want to, if somebody's standing to cross the roadway, that you want to stop for them. And then secondly, you want to proceed beyond the crosswalk, look to the left to see if there's a vehicle in the roundabout, and people that are in the roundabout have right of way before you can actually enter the roundabout itself. So in this case with the sign, I think the philosophy behind having the taller sign is that way before you're approaching the crosswalk or the roundabout, is that you would see the Byerly sign, so that you would access go around the roundabout, enter into the Byerly site for the Byerly's grocery store. Because if you miss that, then you have to go to France, take a left turn, go down to Gallagher, take another left turn, and then cut up through the Macy's site itself to access the Byerly site. Granted, you probably only do that once if you're a regular going to it, but I think that's what their philosophy is of having the taller sign.
Make me think of some of the comments I get from people on 70th Street. The roundabouts are between France and York. They can't see the cars on the other side because of the landscaping, and you want to say, well, what difference does that make? It's irrelevant to whether you're going to be safe once you got to concentrate on the roundabout.
Yeah, it's less safe to have the transparency. Mm-hmm. They're trying to focus people in on that immediate pedestrian and then the left.
So
anyway. To add on top of that too, it is, at a normal four-way intersection, you do need to pay attention to everybody, that's at every other zone. And with the roundabout, it is only the circulatory lane. I've gone to a few roundabout conferences, and they call it terminate the vista, in terms of having that obstruction so that you can't see ahead. You're slowing down and you're focusing on, what's important when you are approaching the roundabout. So, anyway.
All right.
The only other thing I have, I think, is in Peter Beck's comments, and it's kind of hard for me to visualize sitting here, but if I'm going north on France, the store is set back 51 feet, if I'm reading this correctly. The store is set back 51 feet along France.
Which store?
Byerly's store.
Okay.
Byerly's
store.
Okay, fine.
And so if I'm going north on France, 51 feet is a significant amount of space, is it not?
I don't think it's 51 feet.
I think they're saying the original setback would be 50 feet, but it's not with this building pulled up to the street. I think that's what he said. No?
No, it's 51 feet proposed.
It's 51
okay.
feet.
Okay.
And it's
yeah.
On the France side.
On the France side. And I'm just thinking, pulled up to the street, and I'm thinking about how close that Byerly store is that keeps you from seeing Rue de France until you're at the intersection. But I think you might see it before you're at the intersection, because 51 feet is a significant amount of space.
It might not be much different than Whole Foods as you head north.
Right, and that's kind of what I'm thinking.
You can see the medical building across.
And so I don't know where the current sign is at Rue de France. I don't remember just where that is, but that 51 feet would give you an opportunity to put that sign closer to France so it's seeable and visible within that 51 feet.
Certainly on the corner. Just there's a...
Okay. All right, thank you.
Other questions on signage? So from a visualization standpoint, from a safety standpoint, what's the conclusion that staff's reached with respect to this proposed pylon sign?
You didn't restrict the height, you just restricted the square feet?
Correct. The height is conforming. It's only they are requesting 100 square feet rather than 50.
So they could have a tall sign, as tall as they want, but just half as wide?
Correct.
Is there a feeling, Mary, you were talking about the sign, how you feel about that?
No, I understand.
Well, no, I was asking if you had a preference. over
You have a preference
50
for
square
that?
feet over 100 square feet.
My preference would be the lower.
Okay.
Carrie, can you elucidate on the conversation and planning about the 50 versus 100?
With the Planning Commission?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they had a lot of discussion in regard to 100 versus 50. Some were felt okay at 100 square feet, but ultimately the condition that was approved, and it was a unanimous vote at the Planning Commission, was for a 50 square foot sign.
What rationale won the day on that issue?
Didn't want to necessarily vary from the code there. Thought of precedent that we're allowing a larger sign that otherwise wouldn't be allowed by code.
Okay.
And the signage on the wall on the southwest corner at France and the main entry drive, that was deemed to be satisfactory to the Planning Commission. It was just the pylon sign that was troublesome to them?
Correct. There was some discussion about the promenade sign, and similar to some of the comments that the council has made in regard to blending it in with some existing signage. But ultimately, they were comfortable with the sign as proposed.
On the sign for the promenade?
Right.
Because of the request for, our request for easier wayfinding.
Correct, yeah.
Is that it? Okay.
How does fairness play into that with other businesses along the promenade?
I think we could expect to face that issue in the future if we vary from a common plan that's consistent with what we're doing other places in the park.
Yeah.
So if we want to, if the park is more important to us, we can still sign these businesses, but we use the park standard.
And also, just for background, a variance was granted for the Pinstripes development. That signage faces the park, so variances were obtained for that project.
On the wall of the
On the
building.
wall signs, right.
We want the residents to find the businesses off the promenade.
Yeah.
Part of that synergy.
Okay, we'll get a motion coming here, so we can go into further discussion after the motion.
I'd like to move final rezoning from PCD 3 to PUD, final development plan, final plat for 7171 France Avenue for Lund Food Holdings Ordinance 2013-6, Resolution 2013-45, with the current findings and some changes. So number 10, it says applicant attempts to meet an energy savings goal of 10% over state energy code guidelines. Adding number 15, that the north wall design of the Byerly's building will have changes to break up the visual impact, and those details will be approved by our city staff. 16, that the current concept drawing for the Promenade Pond is the one dated 5/29/13 that we saw from Director Teague. 17, the final detail on cost sharing on France and Hazelton Road and the Promenade to be approved by city staff. 18, that the Promenade sign to conform to current Promenade sign designs. And 19, that the two pylon signs be 50 square feet.
Second.
All right, discussion?
Hold on.
7 and 14.
Oh.
Do you want to recognize?
Just a moment here. Take a look, Director Teague, at the conditions 7 and 14 to see if we've got duplication there. Member Bennett just pointed that out.
It is a duplicate.
All right.
And if I could just ask a question on the conditions, you had indicated 50 square feet for the two pylon signs?
Each. 50.
Well, the one on France Avenue is a different situation, I think.
They're allowed 100 square feet on
They're
France.
allowed-
Okay,
so
then
one-
I will, if my second will do it, then it's just the one on Hazelton.
Yes, I approve that clarification.
And I think you also have to get our, the removal of either 7 or 14. Are they exactly the same, Member Bennett?
They are.
I'll approve that.
I'm going to strike 7.
Okay.
Mr. Voss, did you have is that the point you were going to make, is you were allowed 100 feet on France Avenue?
Exactly, yes.
Sorry about that.
We still hope for 100 on both, but the code allows at least 100 on one of them.
Yes.
All right. Okay, does the council understand the motion and the second?
There's another question, Mayor.
For the request, in the applicant's request, we did also invite you to consider a deferral of the park dedication fee for Building A, rather than not the entire site, but at least Building A, because of the shared costs associated with the water feature. And I didn't hear that discussed or as part of the motion. I wonder if you'd consider that as well.
We can discuss it, but I think I know where Member Swenson was going with it, and there was to be no relief from the traditional method because of the explanation from staff that park dedication fee monies would be used to construct the pond.
Well, and if I did my math correctly, the easement costs for to us for the pond could be approximately $272,000, and Building A would give us approximately $545,000. So half of those park dedication fees would be back to you in that easement.
Which is why we, Councilmember, I appreciate your math. I think you're exactly right. But the point of our request was, rather than having us mail you a check and having you mail us a check, why don't we just mail you a smaller check when we're done and we know what the total is? It was a
I didn't want to wait till we were done with Building A and you were about to move into it, because I am going to use those monies to help build the pond.
Part of our regular process as well is to bring you back the developer's agreement that details all of these cost shares, et cetera.
That would be great, because there are a few kind of floating out there.
Right, and we do that customarily after this approval, because this is a time when you're kind of setting some of those, so we know what they're going to be.
Other questions about the motion? Okay. Need a favorable majority in this matter? All right. All those in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Carried. And then with respect to the road reconstruction BA 417, Resolution 2013-47, do we have a motion there?
I would like to move that, but with an additional note to add to the project scope the feasibility of enhanced east-west pedestrian crossings and enhanced landings on France.
Enhanced landings on both sides of France?
I would like to move the matter with the, let me clarify the additional condition. Add to the project scope the feasibility of enhanced east-west pedestrian crossings across France and enhanced landings on the west side of the France intersection.
Those would be 4 and 5 on the resolution. If you look, flip your page over there. Should be right on the back side of the cover page. Here you go. Take a look at that.
You want me to restate that differently, Wayne? Okay, you understand.
I think Manager Neal has a question.
I have a question on actually the previous motion. This question might be for Clerk Mangan. It includes the final rezoning.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Did I screw something up?
No. You stated both things.
I read the whole thing verbatim from the front so that I wouldn't screw it up.
No, that's good.
Member Sprague, would you want to restate your motion?
So I'll approve resolution number 2013-47 with the added condition that we add to the project scope the feasibility of enhanced east-west pedestrian crossings and enhanced landings on the west side of France.
All right. We have a second on that one?
Second.
Thank you. Member Brindle. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried.
Your Honor, if I may.
Member Bennett.
Yes, I wanted to just comment. 6 years ago, I think it was, there was another development proposed for Centennial Lakes, and that also passed on a 4-1 vote, and I actually voted for that, and Member Swenson, you voted against it. And I recall, and I'm going to paraphrase lightly because I'm not trying to put words, but you were concerned about one of the features of that development, which was a parking ramp on the park itself. And you were concerned, I think, in part because you were really anticipating, looking forward to housing being built on the promenade. And I understood your concern then, I understand your concern now, and I have a similar concern this evening. Because I do think that Centennial Lakes Park and the promenade are some of our most valuable public resources. They are our most visited public park, and I think that what we do does have precedent. Fortunately, the housing market has recovered and we are seeing housing built on the promenade, but to have it be just 11 and 22 feet setback from that park with an 81-foot height, when our default setback for our single-family homes, which cap out at often 30 feet even, when that default setback is 30 feet. I really think this is being built too close, and wanted that concern noted on the record. In terms of the roadway project, I can support that and did, because it is something that is of general benefit, and I think in fairness, assessment was fair with the West 70th reconstruction. All of the businesses had been part of that decision making. There was shared benefit, shared burden in terms of the cost. Here I think there is a greater benefit to the south, and so I think in this instance using TIF funding for it is fair. It is something that will benefit the area in terms of movement around the area. So I was happy to be able to support that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Comment? All right. Well, I think as Director Teague mentioned at the beginning, the very reason that we constructed the promenade as a public realm amenity was to encourage private development around it. We've got housing on it. I think it's a wonderful thing. And there may have been a little bit of inaccuracy on those measurements on a preliminary approval basis. I think it didn't come from the applicant. So we're going to get some terrific housing over there, and we're going to get a wonderful new store, and the entire project is going to be a great partnership between the city and Lund's Food Holdings. So it's going to be a great enhancement to the Southdale District. Thank you, everybody. All right, we are on to community comment. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address the council on a concern they have or make an inquiry with regard to anything that wasn't on the agenda this evening? All right, reports and recommendations. Chief is coming. We've got
Your Honor,
potential appeal. Do we have an appellant here? I don't see.
We do not have an appellant here, and so we don't have an appeal.
I don't think we do. So, Chief, good to see you. All right, we will move on to, I think, do we need should we have a dismissal of the appeal?
I will move to affirm the denial of the peddler and solicitor permit requested.
I'll second that.
All right, we got a motion and a second to deny the appeal. I think it's embodied in Resolution 2013-49. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed say nay. Carried. Next is Resolution 2013-48. And that is one that we see due to the generosity of our businesses and residents. Seems like every meeting. And that is accepting various donations. Is there a motion on that one?
So moved.
Second.
We had a motion and a second to accept donations given to the City of Edina. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed say nay. Carried. And those donors' names will be put on the community website or a city website. Donations this reporting period to the Edina Arts Center. very generous gift from Ruth and Mark Valgame in the amount of $500. So, excuse me. And then we will move on to correspondence and petitions. Anything other than what we had on the dais this evening?
No, sir.
All right. Mayor and council comments. And I think it's Member Sprague this week.
Your Honor, we skipped over the Grandview. We were going to submit the slate of Grandview
thank you.
members.
I've got that right
tonight.
here. All right. Sorry, where was that? Yeah, where was it on the agenda?
Your Honor, and Mr. Neal and Your Honor, it appears to me that an earlier version of the agenda is what was duplicated and placed in the council's packets. It was updated on Friday afternoon. However, when the packets were packed, the earlier version must have been packed.
Okay.
I apologize. Good. It should have been item C under number 8.
Thank you. Taking up Roman 8C, which is under reports and recommendations, is a recommendation for the composition of the Grandview Community Advisory Team. And we had some terrific interested candidates. And based on the council discussion in a work session, I'm going to read the names that I think the council endorses for participation on the Grandview Community Advisory Team. From the commercial property owner sector, Nancy Grazzini Olson. From the business owner or manager within the Grandview District, Bill McCreevy. Planning Commission, 2 members, Kevin Staunton, the current chair, and Michael Schroeder. Transportation Commission, 1 member, Jennifer Janovy. Park and Rec rep is Sue Jacobson. The neighborhood residents that are selected by the council, Pat Olk, O-L-K, and Jimmy Bennett. And then the community residents at large, we're actually going to have 3 of those: Sandy Fox, Bright Dornblazer, and Mike Fisher. And those are the proposed slate of candidates. We did not discuss a chair. Should we let the group choose their own chair?
That's our custom.
Okay. All right. So having given the names of those candidates selected by the council, I'll move it. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Now, Member Sprague, council comments.
Council comments. Well, Mayor, you brought up an issue by email that is usually something I talk about, is what are we doing on the 4th of July? Are we going to have a float? What, Director Benarat, any ideas here? It's a special event, as it's the Quasqua Centennial. Let's say that 10 times fast, everybody. I mean, my preference, I enjoyed doing it as a group. I thought that was a good community, show of our cohesive group and outreach. I thought it was a great idea. So I would like to do it as a group again, but what do you?
I liked walking with everybody
Yeah.
last year. I don't know how the 2 of you felt about it.
Oh, I thought it was great.
Walking again would be good. Then we can tell the parade committee not to worry about horses and carriages and classic cars and
exactly
all those things.
And I love walking.
Does that save a little money too, Member Brindle?
It would indeed.
I love walking with Member Brindle. I like her pace. It works. We work together very well on the street. So, and then the other thing is,
so we're prepared. We're ordering you some swag to give away.
Matching polo shirts.
And you will have matching shirts.
And we're going to forego Betsy Ross this year, are we?
Well, I think she about expired last
Right,
year.
she did take care of my 2 boys very well, though. I appreciated that. Just a couple funny little stories. One on Van Valkenburg. After I got elected to the council, he called me over to his house, and we had to sit down. And he kind of felt me out a little bit, where I was coming from, and gave me a little bit of the rich history. And as I recall, he had a lot of archives of documents. So I'm wondering if
Bob Coteen.
boxes and boxes. So it'll be interesting to see some of that stuff come to life through the historical
Depending on
society,
your
hopefully.
view, you could call him a hoarder or a saver.
he already delegated, I think, a lot of it to Bob Coteen.
Did he?
Who was
Okay.
reviewing and Historical Society. I think a lot of it will be archived there.
But he certainly had a nice way about him, and I really appreciated him sitting down, leading me through some history. And then the final thing is, I just when you think you've seen everything down 70th Street, I saw 2 unicyclists going down the street. I've seen them a few times now.
Down 70th?
Yes, down 70th.
In the bike
In the
lane?
bike lane. So I'm sure, I don't know if that's allowed or not, but it's got wheels, I guess. It's
Thank you, Paul. No engine.
no engine.
Yeah.
I've seen, 5-year-olds biking. I've seen a lot of kids biking, actually. And now I've seen the unicyclists, so I've seen it all. That's all I got.
Good. Thank you. Member Swenson.
Couple things. We got an email today about a weed problem. So who's our current weed inspector? It's 6037. I did Kellogg.
Well, you know who the chief weed inspector is, of course.
Well, I know you're the chief, but they also had trash out in front. It looked like they'd moved out and dumped a bunch of stuff, or just moved in and dumped a bunch of stuff. So we need to send our weed inspector out? Okay. The email also brought up, they think it's a rental, so that comes back to the concern about rentals.
And it's been raining.
Yeah, and then I sent Manager Neal a question about a construction site on Lynn that we had an issue with, and could you give us an update, Manager Neal, on that?
Yes, I can. I don't have the number right. Is it 4014? 4012?
Well, 4014 is the new home. 4012 is the yard that's sliding away.
So there was an excavation that took place, and this is after our new ordinance was adopted. The excavator came in and met with our staff and submitted what he considered and our staff considered to be a shoring plan. And there was some assumptions about the shoring that was shown to our staff was going to be placed both on the north property line and the south property line. And it was not. It was placed on the south property line, but not the north property line. Because there was no shoring on the north side, there was a collapse. The property owners, both property owners, the contractor and our staff met at the site today to strike a resolution to that. I believe that resolution is going to be in place possibly as early as tomorrow, but certainly by the end of the week. I think what we've learned about this is, and I met with our building official late this afternoon to talk about it. I think the takeaway from this is that we're going to be a little bit more formal about how we receive shoring plans, and we're going to require them to be shown on a set of plans, not only to be shown on a set of plans where they're going to be shown, but also the engineering detail about what the shoring technique is going to be. And then we have to enforce that. So if we approve that shoring plan, we need to also enforce it in the field. And I think this was an experience that that group learned from and has made some changes immediately in-house to the rules that the building official is able to have some discretion with and can implement that immediately.
Thank you for the update. I appreciate that. That's all.
Member Bennett.
Thank you. Following on comments from my colleagues, it was a lovely service on Saturday for Jim Van Valkenburg. Great music and wonderful comments from family and the 3 mayors, who at one point I think referred to themselves as the 3 tenors. And it was just a real joyous occasion and a celebration of his life. It's great to be able to be a part of that. And I do want to commend staff for quick response. Inspector Kirschman called me this morning and gave really detailed, helpful explanations, and I think the neighbors are grateful that the response was so quick and that and thorough. And I'm also grateful to hear about takeaways. There was also some correspondence, I think, that we received with some question about approval of affordable units at the Waters, and I believe that's been circulated among some neighbors. I got a call actually from a realtor yesterday about it, and it's my recollection, I think it was confirmed earlier this evening by Director Teague, that the project was approved with an offer of affordable housing from the developer, but no requirement that those units be actually built and carried out. And so I think it's, once again, a private matter between the developer or the shelter corporation and the prospective tenants as to what's occurred. But I think there was some misunderstanding that somehow the council had required something that then was not being followed. And I also, thanks for the quick response on Grimes Avenue. There was a hole as the road climbs the hill, and traffic has to shift to another lane right as the hill is climbing, and that was filled before 8 o'clock this morning. So that was great. Thank you.
Good. Member Brindle.
Not much from my vantage point. My experience with Jim Van, I've served for, I don't know, it's got to be at least 10 years on the Crime Prevention Fund with him on my right, because he would always save the chair to his left for me. So I could sit there and he'd say, what are we doing? Where are we? And so I would say, well, we're here. Wow. We got to get done. I want to get out of here. So he was just a very, very funny, very, very sweet man to work with. And I did actually call the Eden Avenue Grill and told them that he had passed. And I said, one of your regulars has gone to the great beyond. And I said, you would serve him his turkey sandwich with half a sandwich on the plate and half a sandwich in the box. And he wouldn't even have to tell them what he wanted. So, but he'll be greatly missed. But he leaves a legacy for all of us to carry forward with the way he did business and what he did. And so I think that we can all share in that and do a little bit of it each and keep it going. I think one of the things he liked to do, because he would hand me a box and say, sort this. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you don't want, and then I'll shred the rest. He loved to take these boxes of papers that he's got to the shredding truck and throw the whole thing at once and watch it just go. He just got the biggest kick out of it. I know it's very silly, but he got the biggest kick out of it. It was very fun to share that with him. But I think that's all I've got.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hard not to think about Jim Van, and I think there's a few other people that are around that love the town like he did. Mm-hmm. And close to a 50-year commitment to his town. And to me, he was the quintessential example of a citizen public servant. Mm-hmm. Served as a local elected official for, I think, 20 years. And then when he left public office, right into volunteering. It was just volunteering right to the end. And for him, life wasn't over till it was over, and he had appointments scheduled Monday, he had appointments scheduled Tuesday with the police chief, and never made it. I want to thank Manager Neal and Mayor Pro Tem Swenson for, I think you went to the Seas Candy Store ribbon cutting.
Hey, and you can't accept gifts, so I got to give it to the city. That was kind of fun.
Oh,
so we fed a lot of people with that candy. It was very good.
Oh.
And you should have seen Manager Neal with the young kids at the Teddy Bear Band.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Thank you. On the 23rd of May, on 2 days' notice, very, very short notice, we found out that the former president of India, Dr. Abdul Kalam, was going to be at the Hindu temple. So Our city manager did a fabulous job of getting appropriate security in place and coordinating everything with Bloomington, because he was going to speak at a banquet in Bloomington that evening. He came to the temple late that afternoon, and he was a very, very interesting guy. 80 years old, never been married, loves the people of India. They love him back. That's what he told me. And at one point in time, there's 400 kids in the audience out there listening to him, and he was getting them all revved up and talking about what they needed to be thinking about in terms of the future and working hard and all these solid virtues. He leaned over to me and he said, Edina seems like a very happy place. I said, well, thank you. It is, I think. So, and then the next morning I went to the Blake School. One of our residents has some kids over there, and so I went over and spoke to some third graders at the Blake School on the 24th. And then on the 31st, when Member Swenson and Manager Neal were covering the art fair and the Seas Candies opening, I went down to the Greater MSP Ahead meeting as we we took on the phase 2 of that project in thinking about our regional strategy for economic development and backstopping the Greater MSP organization. And I think the conclusions that were reached with all these people working on it will become the core of the work for the Regional Council of Mayors for the next year or so. Looking forward to that. So that's it for me. Manager Neal.
I got a couple things tonight. First, we have a redevelopment coordinator. Her name is Cindy Larson, and she's going to start for us on June 20th. That'll be good. We have a transportation planner. His name is Mark Nolan, and he's going to start for us on the 19th of June. So I will invite
Look
both.
at him smiling over there.
Or sooner if Wayne can get him here sooner. I'll invite both of them to come to the first council meeting they can get to, which would probably be our
give them one of those ones
first one
that
in
goes
July.
till 2 in the morning, okay? And then put them at the end of the agenda.
July 16th. But we'll have both of them come and introduce themselves. We have a couple of events next week that we've told you about previously with the Citizens League, our resident engagement events called Financing the Future. One is on Tuesday. It's the bingo themed event. It's at the Senior Center. That's appropriate. At 2 to 4, starts at 2, ends at 4 on Tuesday. On Thursday, at the Braemar Clubhouse is our wine tasting themed event. And it's not just a themed event, there will be actual wine there. And that's from 6 to 8. And so we're doing some promotion of that, so we want to promote that here as well. The last thing I have for you is more of an operational issue, and this has to do with our insurance coverage. Our renewal for our insurance package is July 1st. Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of notice about what our upcoming rates are going to be, but we do have notice now from travelers that they are looking for a substantial increase in rates.
Travelers is because the Gulf don't.
Well, you know, that may be connected to that big check that they wrote us, but they are requesting what is probably going to amount to about a 6-figure increase in our insurance premium for the upcoming year.
Wow.
So because we don't have much time, what we would like to do from staff, what we're recommending that you authorize us to do, is to seek a competitive quote from the League's Insurance Trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good idea. However, what that means for you as a council is that we're not going to have, if we ask them tomorrow, we kind of gave them a heads up that we were going to ask them, but if we tell them to get moving on it tomorrow, we're not going to have their premium estimate before our next council meeting on the 18th. Maybe we'll have an idea of what it might be, but we're not going to have a formal proposal from them by the 18th, which means that we would need sometime between the 18th and the 1st we will get their proposal, and we'll need to make a decision on how to move forward.
Special meeting on the 25th.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, why not just add it to the agenda?
We'll talk to them and tell them that we've got that as an opportunity. That's a good idea.
Gives them 7 more days.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Aircraft noise and
If
insurance.
that would be preferable, because the only other way that we could go about this would be for staff to make some kind of staff decision before the 1st, but bring a fait accompli decision to you on the 16th, which is not the way that we typically like to do our business. So we will run that by them and see if that's a possibility. And the last thing I have is also to reflect a little bit, as the mayor did on the visit by President Kalam. You know, it was very interesting to be incorporated into that visit, and it does make you wonder how if the 82-year-old Muslim former president of India ever envisioned him speaking at a Hindu temple in Minnesota, you know, addressing 400 little Indian kids in the audience. It was really pretty striking. Something I'm sure he never imagined he could do.
I'm actually sure he's heard of Edina before. All the way across the land. He was probably waiting for this opportunity.
He did a very nice job of pronouncing it.
He did.
Yeah, he did. So that's all I have.
Yeah, a nuclear physicist.
Father of the Indian nuclear program and the rocketry program.
Okay. We've got some Edina Housing and Redevelopment Authority work to do, but as far as the council meeting is concerned, we stand adjourned. And now I am going to convene the Edina Housing and Redevelopment Authority. A call to order is taken care of. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bennett.
Here.
Commissioner Brindle.
Here.
Commissioner Sprague.
Here.
Commissioner Swenson. Here. Chair Hovland.
Here. All right. We've got a form of meeting agenda for the HRA. Is there a motion to approve the form of agenda?
So moved.
Second.
And a motion and a second. Discussion. All those in favor of approving the form of agenda for the HRA, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. Minutes of May 21, 2013.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on those. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. And then the first matter of business is Resolution 2013-8. Mr. Neuendorf, tell us what you'd like in terms of HRA action here with respect to that resolution.
Yes,
Please.
thank you. This is Resolution 2013-08, seeking authorization to acquire a fee simple interest in property located at 3944 West 49th and a half Street. We're seeking that you adopt this resolution tonight. I'll just provide a brief summary of this action. After several years in business, the owners of the property have retired and closed the Hooten dry cleaning business located at this address. The site is located immediately adjacent to the north parking ramp that provides public parking for the employees and customers located in the business district. For the last several months, city staff has been in contact with the property owners as they contemplated closing their business. Efforts to acquire the property through a negotiated sale, however, have not been successful. Tonight, we're seeking authority for the Housing and Redevelopment Authority to use its condemnation powers to acquire the site while the building is without any active businesses. This acquisition will allow the city and the HRA to expand public parking options for the business district, something we've been seeking to do for several years. We're also keeping open an option to use the first floor of an expanded parking ramp to include space for a future municipal liquor operation, should that be feasible or desirable in the future.
Questions for Mr. Neuendorf?
Second.
Got a motion and a second with regard to this resolution 2013-08. Further discussion?
I just would like to discuss the process. What is the process of condemning a property? How long does it take, and what's involved?
I think as city attorney would be probably the best comment.
Attorney Knutson, you want to talk about this and then the two different avenues we could follow?
We have to get an updated appraisal. We have to make a formal offer. And then there are two basic processes. The normal, what I'll call the, searching for a word, the regular process would be we file our petition, the district court appoints 3 commissioners, the 3 commissioners have a hearing, and they make their decision, and then that decision of those commissioners, it can either be accepted by the parties or either party can appeal to district court. That's what I call them. And then at the end of the process, we end up owning the property. Then there's called the quick take. And that means that we serve them a quick take notice, and potentially even before the commissioner's hearing, we'll end up owning the property, depending on when the commissioner's hearing is. We own it quickly, it's like 90 days. And then once we own it, we are stuck paying for it whether we like that number or not. The normal process is if we go to the commissioner's hearing and we decide, oh boy, it's worth more, we didn't think it was anywhere near that value, then we can back out. Those are the 2 processes.
So why would we recommend the quick take over the regular methodology?
Normally, the only time you'd use a quick take if there's an urgency to get the property.
Maybe there's a contract that's been led or a public project that just needs to happen with some urgency.
Normally, you want to use a quick take.
It's too much risk.
Well, there is an allusion to a quick take methodology in the first paragraph of the resolution.
I did not prepare the resolution, Mayor.
If you take a look at the resolution, last whereas clause on the first page, it cites a statutory section, and it talks about using a quick take condemnation action methodology. And this is, Member Brindle wisely asked that question, and it's something I wanted to go over with you, is do we want to do it the regular way or the quick take way? Because there are risks associated with doing it the quick take way.
I don't know the timing of it, but again, I was not involved in making that decision.
I can provide some information there. Using the quick take process, the legal counsel for the Housing and Redevelopment Authority suggested that we do consider quick take in this instance. Their recommendation was based in part on the fact that quick take isn't always as quick as one might think. So while there is a 90-day period, there's several steps that have to occur before that 90-day period even begins. So at this point, for this process, we're anticipating acquisition of the site maybe by year end, more likely by January of 2014. The reason that we're looking at an expedited process is to correlate and to collaborate with our other acquisition on 49th and a half Street. The city and the HRA will be closing on the former Edina Realty property just to the east of the parking garage later this summer. We're scheduled for a closing at the end of June. The idea is that if we had both properties in hand, we could expand the parking ramp at one time, a little bit to the west, a little bit to the east, and do it in one shot rather than multiple phases.
So, let's see, how do I want to ask this question? Are we going to be satisfied with the acquisition price regardless what it is? Because with quick take, as I understand it, then we're stuck with whatever the commissioners determine the price is going to be.
You own it.
We own it. And whereas in the conventional methodology, we can decide if we want to own it or not.
Yes.
And so what's the difference in the timing of quick take versus conventional? In terms of the duration of the process, which goes to Member Brindle's question.
It's really hard to say how quickly, if we accept everyone accepts the commissioner's award, it could be relatively, a few months. But what I can't predict is how long will it take the commissioners to hold a hearing, because you have 3 people and they have to be scheduled, and probably easier this time of year. In the winter, we often find that the commissioners are scattered all over the place, and you might have to wait months. And then the next step is anyone can appeal to the district court. And how long is that going to take? That depends on how busy the calendar is.
They're bad right now. I'm sorry to tell you.
I mean, those are variables we can't control.
Calendars.
Well, what's your advice? Which method should we use?
If you want it, and it's hard to say this on camera. I mean, if you're not concerned, well, you're obviously concerned about the price.
Yes.
If the timing is more important than money, then a quick tape. If money is more important than time,
but we also
then don't use a quick tape.
we also have to consider the risk of delaying construction and what a two-phase project versus a one-phase would cost.
You could also amend this resolution later to start out as a regular take, I'll call it, and change to a quick take if it gets bogged down.
Say that again.
You could adopt an amended resolution later and allow you to do a quick take.
That's what I was going. That was my next.
So you're saying adopt this as a regular
take? Why couldn't we adopt
take?
a conventional resolution to do use the ordinary process for eminent domain, not quick take, and then if we decided we needed to do a quick take, could we do it? Could we subsequently amend that resolution?
Sure.
And you're saying yes.
So delete the paragraph for now, with the option of adopting it at some future point. The whereas, the last whereas on the first page.
Yeah, because it's still, the rest of it still gives the necessary
Yeah, I think.
commands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I move
Is
that?
there, well, the only
I
other question I have, Member Swenson, before you move it is, the paragraph we're striking refers to a section 117.042, which is, I assume, the quick take section, and then the resolution refers to that same statutory section. So,
You delete that, and then can I just suggest that you authorize, if you want to vote to approve the resolution, and eliminating the quick take process.
just
And then
say
we'll
under
clean
its
it up.
power of eminent domain and strike the language and pursuant to Minnesota statutes and take out those statutory references.
You can take out the reference to 117.042.
And then the other one, 117.036, we don't know what that is either.
Well, it's the,
I can find out in a second. I think that's
Public
just the
service
general
lines.
requirements, yeah.
Yeah, if we could take out the language and pursuant to Minnesota statute section 117.042 and leave the rest in, that might be a satisfactory alternative. Because it does appear that those other requirements are threshold requirements.
Yeah,
The way that-
117.036 is appraisal and negotiation requirements, which are
The way
always
that
required.
needs to stay in.
Yeah.
So let's,
So all I did is cross out section 117.042.
And does 042 prescribe only quick take, or does it prescribe either method? So we want to leave reference to
think that's
042 in.
Okay, I'm waiting for his.
That's quick take.
Okay, so we're crossing out from the word "and" pursuant to Minnesota statute section 117.042 in the now therefore part, and we are taking out the last whereas clause, and I made the motion and I would accept those changes.
is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Aye, opposed say nay. Carried. And then we've got another resolution for the HRA to deal with related to those Hazelton roadway improvements we discussed in the council meeting. And Member Sprague, you would want the same sort of conditions here, I would think, in this resolution that you imposed in the other resolution in the City Council meeting.
That's correct.
Okay. With those additions from Member Sprague to the resolution 2013-9, is there a motion?
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
All right. Got a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2013-9 with some additional conditions. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Discussion? Discussion?
Yes.
Member Brindle, thank you.
The second sentence in the second paragraph here, the overall project cost is estimated at $1,043,748. Now, in our previous discussion with Jim Voss of Cressa, I think what was mentioned was that this is the remainder that is owed that would be financed through the Centennial or paid through the Centennial Lakes Tax Increment Fund. There is other monies that are going toward this from Byerly's, correct? From Lund's Food Holdings?
Actually, the estimate that you see there is actually the estimate for the construction for Hazelton Road itself, the $1 million, with the exception of looking at the east-west crossing across France Avenue. The other items were separate discussion as far as what's in the cost share part, which will come back with that developer's agreement.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that that's what this number is, and that it's clear of the things that are cost share then.
Yep, and that number will be refined as they zone into the actual design of the project. So that we start out large and keep zoning in, and it probably will be reduced down.
Yeah, and it's an estimate.
Yes, that.
Okay.
And it's not embodied in the resolution itself, which is on the flip side.
Correct.
Okay, good. Any other inquiries?
No.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Any other business for the HRA? The HRA stands adjourned.